In this video series, we're going to be going through all the chapters of A Storm of Swords in vertical footage, since there are no graphic novels for us to make an animated comic book like another series we have. This is the 5th video in this series and will cover chapters 55 to 68. Our first video covered the first 13 chapters of A Storm of Swords, and the next 3 covered 13 chapters each. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos, we suggest watching them first and then coming back to this video. We will also be using character icons throughout the video to help emphasize who is being talked about throughout the chapters. Anyway, let's continue with Jon VII. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 55. Jon VII. Molestown is burning when they wake. Jon Snow watches the smoke from the top of the King's Tower, bracing himself on the crutch Maester Aemon provided. Jon thinks Styr has already lost any chance of sneaking up on Castle Black, yet Styr still announces his advance to incite fear in the Night's Watch. Jon tells himself that even if they die, the Watch will not be cut down in their sleep, and he counts that as something he has managed. Every man in the Watch is being used for defense. Jon insists he can fight when they try to stop him. Noy says he needs every man who knows how to use a spear, and Jon answers with a quick remark about the pointy end, recalling saying something similar to his younger sister. Noy agrees to use him, assigns him to a tower with a longbow, and warns him not to fall. Jon watches the King's Road and thinks the Magnar will come up it before the day ends, with Thenns behind him carrying axes, spears, and bronze and leather shields, along with Grigg the Goat, Quart, Big Boil, and the rest. He also thinks of Ygritte and tells her in his thoughts to stay away, go south to raid or hide, and not to come to Castle Black, because she will only find death there. With more clothing than men, they stuff spare garments with straw, drape cloaks over them, and post them as false watchers. Noy places them on every tower and in many windows, some poised with spears or crossbows. The plan is to make the Thenns think Castle Black is heavily defended and hesitate to attack. On the roof of the King's Tower with him, Jon has 6 scarecrows, along with 2 living brothers. Deaf Dick Follard sits in a crenel, while Satin the boy from Old Town paces and keeps adjusting the straw men's clothes and poses. Jon thinks the boy may believe the dummies will look more convincing if arranged properly, or that the waiting is wearing on him the same way it is on Jon. Satin claims to be 18 and is called by the name he had from the brothel where he was raised. Jon notes his youthful inexperience, his pretty features, and that time at Castle Black has hardened his hands. Jon recalls Noy saying Satin is passable with a crossbow and wonders if he will still stand firm when fighting comes. When Jon first laid eyes on Castle Black, he questioned how a stronghold lacking outer walls could ever be protected. He remembered his uncle explaining that it was not meant to be defensible in that way, because the Night's Watch was sworn to stay out of the realm's quarrels. Benjen said some Lord Commander forgot those vows and nearly ruined the Watch with ambition, giving example of leaders who tried to pass the Watch to a bastard son or crown themselves king beyond the wall. He also recalled a time when the commanders at Snowgate and the Nightfoot fought each other, then joined to murder their Lord Commander in Castle Black before the Stark in Winterfell executed them, made easy because their forts were easy to take. Benjen said the Watch survived because the rulers of the 7 kingdoms saw it as no threat regardless of who led it, but Jon notes that the 7 kingdoms have forgotten the Watch. Donal Noy tells the small garrison that the castle itself is not worth defending and orders them to empty the armory, move what stores they can up to the top of the wall, and make their stand around the gate. They build a rough barrier at last. A 10-foot, crescent-shaped barricade made from stacked supplies. The rampart is arranged to protect the 2 key points, the northern gate and the bottom of the great wooden switchback stairway that climbs the wall. The villagers from Molestown are being sent up the winch to the top of the wall. Jon sees brothers hauling barrels up the steps and working the barricade. Some still treat him as a turncloak. He notes Rast, whom Jon once threatened with Ghost if he kept harassing Samwell Tarly. Jon sees Rast raking leaves under the stairs and repeatedly looking up at him. Donal Noy shouts orders to Molestown men below, and Jon thinks Noy has a lord's voice and recalls his father telling him that a captain must be heard. Most of the village has fled to Castle Black after Jon's warning. Noy orders every man strong enough to fight to help defend the barricade or go home and face the Thenns. Noy puts the women and children to work too. The younger ones haul water and mind the fires. The Molestown midwife helps Sildis and Maester Aemon with the wounded, and Three Finger Hob ends up with more kitchen help than he can manage. Two of the volunteer to fight and show enough skill with crossbows to earn a position partway up the steps. Saturn looks south and asks Jon if the Scarecrow Sentinels drove the wildlings off. Jon says they can hope, but thinks the delay more likely means the wildlings stopped to loot Molestown or are waiting for nightfall to move. Maester Aemon has sent out many ravens, but so far no replies. Clydas and Maester Aemon take the winch cage up to the wall's top with most of the Molestown women. Septon Chelidar leads a prayer at the barricade. Deaf Dick Follard sleeps while Saturn paces the battlements. Near dusk, Owen the Oaf arrives with black bread. Jon watches the western sky darken while stars begin to show. He wonders where Ghost is and thinks of Ygritte, then tells himself not to dwell on her. The wildlings arrive after dark. When the horns sound, Saturn wets himself, and Jon ignores it and tells him to shake Deaf Dick awake. Saturn admits he is scared, and Jon answers that the attackers are too. After Saturn returns, Jon instructs him to conserve bolts, only firing with a clear shot, and to reload behind a Merlin. Jon does not bother briefing Dick, knowing Dick already understands. Jon draws a black-shafted arrow with grey fletching, and as he notches it, he remembers Theon Greyjoy once praising how deadly a grey goose feather can be. Jon thinks Theon is the better hunter. He spots movement near the armory, but holds his fire because he cannot see well enough to justify an arrow. When he sees three figures break from the old stables, he releases an arrow, hears a grunt, and sees only two figures continue across the yard. Jon finds four more rushing around the hollow of the Lord Commander's keep. He draws and fires twice in quick succession, killing one and hitting a shield. He hears Deaf Dick's crossbow and then Saturn's, and Saturn shouts that he hit one in the chest. Jon tells him to take another shot. Jon no longer has to hunt for targets and instead picks between them. He shoots down a wildling archer as the man is readying a shot, then sends an arrow at an axeman chopping at Harden's tower. Jon sees Big Boyle and a wildling he knows killed by Mully. When Jon empties his quiver and grabs another, Jon looses several arrows for every bolt Dick manages through his crossbow. He hears wildlings yelling to one another. A wildling arrow tears through the throat of the straw sentinel next to Jon, and Jon barely reacts. In his thoughts, he asks his father's gods for a clear shot at the Magna of Then. Jon keeps shooting despite stiff fingers and a bleeding thumb. He sees fire take the common hall, which quickly goes up in flames. Jon spots torchbearers on the armory roof, and Dick climbs for a shot and fires, but misses. A wildling archer hits Dick and he falls into the yard below. Searching for the shooter, Jon catches a brief glimpse of thick red hair before she disappears. Jon curses and looses at the men on the armory roof. Jon sees Thenns driving up the King's Road in a tight column with shields raised. Jon thinks the battle has shifted. Jon grabs Saturn and drags him to the north rampart overlooking the gate and Noy's makeshift barricade. The Thenns are already there, armed with bronze plates and weapons. Saturn asks what they should do, and Jon answers that they kill them. Jon and Saturn have an easy angle, with the Thenns turned away as they scramble over the crescent barricade. Jon reaches for another shaft and finds his quiver empty again, while Saturn begins to crank his crossbow. Jon steps away to fetch more arrows, but the trapdoor bangs open right in front of him. He drops the bow, yanks Longclaw free, and meets the first Thenn at the opening, driving Valyrian steel through bronze and sending the man back down. Jon hears more voices below and calls to Saturn. Saturn plants a quarrel in the next man's face and he drops out of sight. Jon and Saturn pour a kettle of boiling oil onto the men below. Jon slams the trap shut, sets the iron kettle on top of the trapdoor to weigh it down, then grabs Saturn and the two retreat to the roof. There they can see the crescent barricade Noi constructed, which is the last defensive position they have around the gate and winch. A few Black Brothers and some Mole Town's men still hold the top of the stacked crates and barrels, but wildlings are pouring over the barrier and driving them back. Jon sees Rast with a spear through his belly, young Henley already dead, and old Henley surrounded and failing. He spots Easy leaping from cask to cask, swinging his blade until a bronze axe takes him below the knee and he goes down screaming. Saturn says they are breaking, and Jon answers they are already broken. The villagers begin to run, then throw down their weapons and abandon the barricade, leaving the brothers too few to hold it alone. Jon watches the watch try to pull back in a line, but the Thenns overrun them with spears and axes and they flee as well. Dornish Dilly takes a spear in the back. Keggs nearly reaches the steps when a Thenn grabs his cloak to haul him back, but Saturn shoots the Thenn with a quarrel before the axe can fall, and Keggs crawls up the stairs. Jon sees the gate is no longer being held. Noi has shut and chained it, but no one stayed to guard it, and the only real refuge is 700 feet up the winding wooden stair to the top of the wall. Jon asks Saturn which gods he follows and tells him to pray. Jon gets some more arrows. Saturn keeps firing down at the climbers and dropping behind a battlement to reload, and Jon notes the boy is fast. The fight shifts to the wooden steps. Noi has stationed spearmen on the first two landings, but the villagers' panic sends them running upward, with Thenns cutting down anyone who lags behind. Archers and crossbowmen higher up try to shoot over the retreating men. Jon fires into the press and sees a wildling tumble back down the stairs as heat from the fires makes the wall drip and the flames flicker against the ice. Jon keeps shooting, but there are too many Thenns for only him and Saturn. 60 or more drive up the steps, killing as they climb. On the fourth landing, 3 Black Brothers try to hold with longswords, but they are quickly overrun and their blood runs down the stairs. Jon recalls his father's lesson that fleeing makes men easy prey and stirs a killer's hunger. The archers on the 5th landing run before the fight even reaches them, and the retreat becomes a slaughter. Jon tells Saturn to grab the torches and the fire arrows waiting by the fire, with their heads wrapped in oil-soaked rags. Jon notes fear on Saturn's face and in himself as well. Then Jon spots Styr. The Magna climbs over the ruined barricade. With his helm off, Styr looks over the victory with a smile. However, Jon thinks Styr has moved too late and could have saved more men by leading earlier. A war horn answers from above, a deep, drawn-out blast sounding from the 9th landing where Donal Noi stands. Jon knocks a fire arrow and Saturn lights it using the torch, then Jon draws and sends it down from the ramparts. He does not shoot at Styr. He aims for the base of the steps where Noi had piled fuel and supplies up to the first landing. Casks, kegs, and sacks, lard and lamp oil, bundles of leaves and oily rags, and dry wood and shavings. The old wooden stair is soaked in oil and Noi has poured more of it down the steps from the 9th landing to the 7th. Jon can only hope most of their own men make it to safety before Noi throws the torches, since the Black Brothers know the plan but the villagers do not. Wind and flame do the rest, and Jon can only watch. With fire below and fire above, the wildlings have no escape. Some push upward and die, some try to force their way down and die, and others freeze in place and die there. Many jump from the steps to avoid burning and die from the fall. A group of Thenns remains trapped between the fires until the heat cracks the ice, and the lower third of their stairs breaks away, tearing loose with a mass of ice. That is the last Jon sees of Styr, the Magna of Thenn, and he thinks the wall is defending itself. Jon's injured leg barely holds him despite the crutch, so Saturn helps him down into the yard. Jon tells the Old Town boy to bring the torch because he wants to look for someone. He thinks the fighters on the steps were mostly Thenns and assumes some of Mance's free folk may have gotten away, and that she could be among them. They make their way down past the bodies from the trapdoor fight. Jon goes into the darkness with the crutch tucked under one arm. By then, the stables and the common hall have collapsed into smoking ruins. Jon finds Coet dead and Stone Thumbs near death. He comes across Thenns he barely knew, and he finds Big Boil alive but badly weakened from blood loss. Jon finds Ygritte lying on old snow below the Lord Commander's tower with an arrow lodged between her breasts. Ice crystals have settled across her face. Jon sees the shaft is black, but the fletching is white duck feather, so he tells himself it is not one of his arrows, although Jon has forgotten that twice he grabbed new arrows and never checked to see what kind of fletching they were, so Jon probably did kill her. Jon kneels beside Ygritte in the snow, and Ygritte opens her eyes and speaks his name in a faint voice, then asks if Castle Black counts as a real castle now instead of only a tower. Jon tells her it does and takes her hand. Ygritte answers that she wants to see at least one true castle. Jon tells her she will see many, says the fighting is over, and says Maester Aemon will tend her. He touches her hair, insisting an arrow will not be enough to kill her, and says Aemon will pull it out and stitch her up, and give her milk of the poppy. Ygritte brings up the cave they once shared and says they should have stayed there, adding that she told him so. Jon says they will go back and repeats that she will not die. Ygritte lifts a hand to his cheek, tells him he knows nothing, and then dies. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 56. Bran IV. Mira Reed thinks that the weed-covered ruins in front of them are just another old castle, but Bran knows otherwise. It is Nightfoot, the fortress that marks the end of the world. While looking at it, Bran thinks about his dream, the one showing him that his brother Robb is dead, and tells himself that he has to be just as brave as he was. The Nightfoot has a dark history, full of horrors and murder, something not even Benjen Stark denied when Bran asked him about it. Now in ruins, it is just as foreboding for Bran, and even Summer is ill at ease here. Despite what Jojen's green dream had told him, there is no way through the ruins. The brothers of the Night's Watch sealed the gates and tunnels before leaving the castle for good. Now Bran thinks they should have gone to Castle Black instead, but Jojen reminds him of the encounter with the wildlings, which almost cost Summer his life. Mira proposes to go and find another castle to cross the wall, but Bran tells her that they would all be sealed. She then decides to climb the wall for a better vantage point. Bran wishes he could too, as once he had been a climber himself. Bran watches as Mira goes up the old treacherous steps until she disappears at the top. Jojen tells Bran that Mira won't be back for a while and states they should be scouting themselves down here. They find the castle is empty apart from the scurrying rats, and though Jojen thinks it to be a good idea, neither Bran nor Hodor are keen to explore the cellars. Bran keeps remembering the horrifying tales old Nan told him about this place. The Rat Cook, the Mad Axe, or the 79 deserters, now forever frozen inside the wall. They spend the day looking around and find nothing. Around dusk, Mira returns. She reports that though she had a good view from the top of the wall, she didn't find a way down, at least not one that Bran, carried by Hodor, could use. As there seems to be no way through, Mira questions her brother about his green dream, but Jojen is sure they are at the right place. As night falls, Bran recalls another one of old Nan's stories, the one about the Night's King. He was the commander of the Watch, a man who knew no fear, but he fell prey to a woman with cold skin from the other side of the wall and sired a child. He then returned to Nightfoot, declared himself king and the dead woman queen, and bent the brothers of the Watch to his will by sorcery. He ruled for 14 years before the Starks of Winterfell and the wildlings took him down together. Bran remembers old Nan saying that though the king's name had been erased from history as something too shameful to remember, maybe because he was a Stark himself. While Hodor Jojen and Mira set out to build a fire and cook dinner, Bran ponders about the horror stories he had heard as a kid. After their meal, Jojen says they should sleep, adding that he hopes for another green dream for more directions. But Bran can't sleep, still thinking of the stories. Eventually, he hears a noise, and though he tries to convince himself that it is only the wind, soon he realizes it's footsteps inside the kitchen. Near panic, Bran listens and realizes the steps are coming from the well near them. Crawling across the floor, Bran silently wakes Mira, who hears the noise right away. Armed with her three-pronged frog spear and net, she stalks close to the well, while Jojen and Hodor lie asleep. With Summer away, in his desperation to help Mira, Bran slips into Hodor's mind. It is much harder than taking over the wolf, but the boy makes Hodor stand and grab his greatsword. Before he could draw it though, there is a screech from the well and something monstrous emerges, and the shock of seeing it throws Bran out of Hodor's body and back into his own. Mira attacks the figure, who falls and pleads for mercy, introducing himself as Sam. As Jojen finally wakes and throws a branch to the fire so they can see, it turns out that the screeching is from a baby held by a skinny girl wrapped in furs. Bran tells Mira to leave the big, fat Sam alone, adding that he looks like a brother of the Night's Watch. Sam agrees, calling himself a crow, and Bran asks if he is the three-eyed crow, but Sam denies this. Annoyed, Mira frees Sam from her net, while the skinny girl with the baby introduces herself as Gilly. She then asks if any of them might be the One, a person someone called Cold Hands told them to find. Samwell Tarly adds that Cold Hands warned them about people in Nightfoot, but he didn't think they would be perched right on top of the stairs. At Jojen's prompting, Sam reveals that there is a gate under the castle that leads to the other side of the wall, but only he, a brother of the Night's Watch, can open it. This he knows from Cold Hands. Bran wants to know if this Cold Hands happened to be green, as the green men of the legends rode elks the way Sam claims Cold Hand does. Sam explains that he isn't green and, in fact, looks like a brother of the Watch, only dead cold. He likens Cold Hands to the White Walkers, but says that, as opposed to them, Cold Hands can talk and doesn't have blue eyes. When asked why he is not there with them, Sam reveals that Cold Hands cannot cross the wall due to the old magic in the Foundation. Bran remembers that according to Old Nan, monstrous and evil things cannot cross the wall. Meanwhile, Jojen tells Sam that he's not the one Cold Hands is after, but Bran is. Sam realizes who Bran really is, a Stark of Winterfell and Prince of the North, but the boy asks him to keep the secret, which Sam promises. He then tells them how Bran's half-brother, Jon Snow, had disappeared on a scouting mission, but Mira and Bran assure him that Jon Snow is alive and back on this side of the wall, probably already at Castle Black by now. After this, Summer shows up, and when he shows trust towards Samwell, Bran decides they will go with the Black Brother to see Cold Hands. They gather their things, and after Sam makes sure that Gilly and the baby will be safe in the kitchen until he returns, he leads them down the well. The descent is long but uneventful. They reach what Sam had called the Black Gate, but it isn't black at all. It is made of white weirwood and has a face carved into it. Bran thinks the face looks like it belongs to a man who lived 1,000 years and forgot to die. Just then, the door opens, its white, blind eyes, and asks who is there. Samwell Tarly says he is the sword in the darkness, the watcher on the wall, and repeats his vows. To this, the door opens its mouth until it is wide enough for them to pass. And as Bran does, riding in his basket on Hodor's back, his head gently touches the wood of the white door. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 57. Daenerys V. Daenerys and her army arrive at Meereen, a city as large as Astapor and Yunkai combined. Behind high, many-coloured walls stand the 800 feet tall pyramid with the bronze harpy on top. Daario Naharis asserts that the people of Meereen are cowards because they follow a woman with the legs of a chicken, But then a man comes forth from the city to face them. The peculiar-looking champion taunts Daenerys' men, wanting them to challenge him in single combat. Dany's blood riders are eager to meet the challenge, but she tells them to settle down, not willing to risk any of them. Ser Jorah applauds Daenerys' decision, saying the hero of Meereen can't harm them, but old Arstan Whitebeard disagrees, stating that the challenger boosts morale, which could decide a battle. Ser Jorah replies that if their champion would lose a duel, their morale could take a hit all the same, and the old man tells him that overly careful people don't win wars. Jorah points out that even if they were to engage and kill the champion, the city gates wouldn't open, so this would be risking a life for nothing. Arstan thinks the situation is more of a question of honor. Dany stops the argument. Her host might be large, but only 8,000 of them are soldiers. Most are only ordinary people soon needing to be fed. This is a problem, as Meereen, expecting Daenerys' army, harvested or destroyed every source of food in her way, and even poisoned wells. What's more, they crucified many slave children along the road to taunt her, a sight Daario tried to spare her from, unsuccessfully. Dany had counted all 163 dead children on the road, pledging revenge for them. Brown Ben Plum, the new leader of the Second Sons, informs Daenerys and her war council that the hero of Meereen is called Osnak Zopal, son of the richest man of the city, known to be a bad-tempered and cruel warrior. When Osnak Zopal takes out his manhood and urinates in the direction of Daenerys' pavilion, Daario offers to ride up to the wall and kill the man. Dany is hesitant. Daario is just as valuable as her blood riders, but she knows she cannot ignore the challenge much longer. As many on the walls copy Osnak pissing towards the besiegers, Dany muses how they would never do that if a proper Khalasar were outside their city. At last, Daenerys gives the order to send strong Belwas against Osnak Zopal. When asked why she picked Belwas, Dany explains that the big man used to be a slave in this very city, so if he wins, it would embarrass Meereen even further. But if he dies, Osnak triumphs over a slave, which is hardly a victory in the eyes of Meereen. After a short time toying with Osnak, Belwas puts a quick end to the hero of Meereen, cutting off his head and hurling it towards the colourful wall. Daario finds this amusing, but Ser Jorah cautions that this victory is without meaning, as they can't take the city by it. Daenerys agrees, but adds that she's still glad the awful man had died. Though the defenders on the walls are now shooting arrows at Belwas, the huge man still squats and defecates in the direction of the gates, using the dead hero's cape to wipe, and returns only after that. He's welcomed back with praise, even from Ser Jorah. Dany promises strong Belwas the meal he most desires, but mentions the man is injured. Belwas explains he's always let his opponents cut him once, so counting the scars, he could know how many battles he has won. However, Daenerys had lost Khal Drogo to a small injury just like this, and orders Missandei to find a good healer for Belwas in their midst. Belwas objects, but Dany is adamant, and soon the cut is being tended to. Once that's done, the Khaleesi calls her advisors to her pavilion to have a war council. Daenerys, her blood riders, Brown Ben, Ser Jorah, Grey Worm, and Daario examine all possible angles to breach the city walls, but none seems to be doable. At last, Jorah suggests they should just leave Meereen to be, as their fight is across the sea in Westeros, and they lack any resources to lay siege. The Dothraki riders agree, saying that when cowards hide behind tall walls, the Khalasar goes to find more worthy opponents. But Dany feels she can't leave the slaves of Meereen behind. Reluctantly, Brown Ben, once a slave in Meereen himself, admits there might be a way. He tells the others how he escaped the city using the sewers emptying into the nearby river, but warns that it isn't only a horrifying path, but also dangerous, as giant rats and worse live down there, and the sewers fill up completely with waste and water every now and again. Daenerys is considering the solution, but has no idea who could pull it off. The Dothraki are riders, and the Unsullied strong suit is also open warfare. The Khaleesi sends her advisors away, and only Brown Ben remains. When Daenerys mentions that her dragon seemed to like the man, he reveals that he has a drop of Targaryen blood in him, as one of his ancestors married a dragon princess a long time ago. Dany takes this with a grain of salt, as Ben also states that this man had a penis 6 feet long. Once Brown Ben leaves, Dany thinks about how easily she could take Meereen if only her dragons were grown already. From there, she starts to think about who should ride them once they are grown, and Daario Naharis pops into her mind. She knows the man wants her, and she realizes the feeling is mutual. All the same, Daenerys is aware that she cannot trust the sellsword, remembering how easily Daario betrayed his partners for her. After a while, Dany feels her pavilion is too small and orders Missandei to have her horse saddled. She takes old Arstan as her bodyguard, knowing the man won't boast as Belwaz would, and won't give her suggestive looks like Daario did. The Khaleesi and her two companions, Missandei and Arstan, ride on the beach, watching the small 3-ship fleet Daenerys commands. Leaving the Dothraki and Unsullied camps behind, Dany reaches her third and biggest camp, the one made of freed slaves. As opposed to her other subjects, these people don't kneel when seeing her, but call her mother, and try to touch her, believing it would bring good fortune. Daenerys is talking to a pregnant woman, helping her choose a name for her child, when a tall man grabs her and roughly pulls her off her horse. Someone hurries to protect Dany, but the attacker, Mero, also called the Titan's Bastard, cuts him down, challenging the crowd for another defender. Old Arstan dismounts and stands in his way. Mero dismisses him, but the old man attacks anyway, and Dany is surprised to see that Arstan dispatches the warrior with ease, even though he only has a stick against Mero's sword. Arstan then apologizes to Daenerys, saying he's getting old and lax, otherwise Mero could have never got so close. Dany returns to her tent. When Ser Jorah comes to report, she confronts him about telling her that Mero had escaped. Jorah says he didn't think it was important, as he put a bounty on the Titan's Bastard. Daenerys tells Jorah that the bounty should go to Arstan, and what's more, she wishes the old man to be knighted. To her surprise, both Jorah and Arstan object to this vehemently, and soon the old man reveals he's already a knight. Dany orders him to tell her his real name, and it turns out Arstan is in fact Sir Barristan Selmy the Bold, captain of the Kingsguard, who once betrayed Daenerys' father and served King Robert ever since. Daenerys asks whom Selmy serves now, and the old man offers himself to her, telling how he was cast out and removed from the Kingsguard, and how King Joffrey sent men to have him killed, which prompted him to look for another king to serve. Ser Jorah is eager to kill the old man as a traitor, but Sir Barristan reminds him that he had been fighting on Robert Baratheon's side too at one point. What's more, as a former member of King Robert's small council, Sir Barristan knows that Mormont was sent to spy on Daenerys and her late brother. Dany begs Ser Jorah to contradict these accusations, but the knight admits them, adding that though it started that way, he's now a faithful servant of Daenerys. She silences him. Sensing their mother's fury, the dragons are stirring, and Daenerys is badly tempted to say the word and burn both knights alive for their treachery. Instead, she tells them to go away, and when Sir Barristan asks where to, Daenerys has her answer ready: through the sewers. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 58, Tyrion VII. Tyrion Lannister wakes up early and dresses in the dark while his wife, Sansa, is still sleeping, mumbling something in her dream. He laments that even though they are married and share a bed, nothing intimate has ever happened between them. Tyrion then remembers the day he had to tell Sansa her brother and mother had both died, and how the girl wouldn't even cry in front of him. He could only hear her sobs through a closed door. Tyrion wanted to comfort her that day, but thought better of it, knowing Sansa wouldn't take it from a Lannister. He did, however, keep the horrific details of the Red Wedding to himself in order to protect her. As he pulls his boots on, Tyrion muses on how Sansa lost everything she ever loved: her family, her home, even her name. For him, however, this should be a happy time, as his family has won the war, but the dwarf realizes that he's somehow almost as miserable as Sansa Stark. Tyrion slips out of the room. As cold as his marriage might be, it did come with one significant improvement. As a married man, he finally got better apartments to live in, just over Kitchen Keep. Every member of his household had a comfortable place to live in now, Shae included, and even the sellsword Bronn, whose little cell consisted of a tiny window. Tyrion now descends through his chambers to the cellars, knowing that most of Red Keep's buildings are connected by underground tunnels. Using these, soon he finds the place he is headed for, a half-forgotten room full of old dragon skulls. Here, Shae is waiting for him, standing between a dragon's jaw, naked. After some playful teasing, the two get intimate. Later, Tyrion says they should leave before Sansa wakes up, and Shae jokingly suggests he should give drugs to his wife so they could be together more freely. Then she asks, realizing that Tyrion is tense, what troubles him. Tyrion makes a list, including several of his own family members as well as Oberyn Martell, while wondering if Shae truly loves and cares for him or is just very good at her job. Soon it's time to leave. Tyrion knows his father would do terrible things if their relationship were ever found out. This is a real danger, despite Varys' efforts to make the castle believe that Shae is but a simple housemaid. Tyrion is well aware of the fact he's acting like a fool, risking everything for a woman who probably loves his money purse more than him. Briefly, while dressing in the Dark Dragon room, Tyrion contemplates telling everything to Sansa. He thinks she might understand it, as her father had a bastard son and they are only married on paper anyway. He decides against it though, not trusting the girl who once betrayed her own father to Queen Cersei. The dwarf acknowledges that the only safe course would be to send Shae away, perhaps to a brothel frequented by rich people where she could have a good life, or at least a better one than she had before they met. Alternatively, he could arrange a marriage for her, perhaps to Bronn, who would surely not be against the idea, or even Sir Talad, the young knight who makes no secret of his interest in Shae. The pale morning light illuminates the room somewhat, and Tyrion reflects he has to go to Joffrey's wedding, which he anticipates to be worse than the Battle of the Blackwater. Before leaving, Shae tells him he loves him, and Tyrion once again is full of regret, thinking she deserves a better life than what he can give her. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 59, Sansa IV. Sansa wakes, wishing she could make her dream reality. In it, she had been back in Winterfell and all of her family had still been alive, even Lady the Direwolf. In reality, Lady is long dead, and so is the House of Stark. Every last one of them. Sansa's parents and brothers and sister, and even Septa Mordain. It is just her now, all alone. The bed is empty beside her, but this does not surprise her. Tyrion is a troubled sleeper, and he often wakes before the sun. Sansa usually finds him in his solar, bending over some tomb or another. If not there, she would find him in the kitchen asking for freshly baked bread or walking in the gardens. Now Sansa opens the shutters and waits until her maids come, bringing hot water for her morning bath. These girls, dark-haired Shae and simple Brella, are new. Tyrion had told her that all of her old maidens were Queen Cersei's spies. This much Sansa had suspected for a long time. She asks them where Tyrion is, and while Brella has no answer, Shae thinks her husband might have gone to see his father. With the maid's help, Sansa undresses and gets into the tub of hot water, contemplating asking for some wine. She's nervous. Today is King Joffrey's wedding day, and she will have to spend the entire day with company, starting with Cersei and various other highborn lords and ladies over breakfast, including Joffrey himself. Soon after she's done with the bath, Tyrion shows up, followed by his squire Podrick Payne. The girl reflects how at first she used to be wary of this young man for being the relative of Sir Ilan Payne, the executioner who beheaded her father. By now, she knows that he's harmless and at least as afraid of her as she was of him. After some awkward bickering, the dwarf and his servant leave to change for breakfast, which Tyrion has no intention of attending to sober. Sansa tries to strike up a polite conversation with Podrick, but the boy is way too nervous for it, as he always appears to be around her. Soon it is time to leave for the banquet. Sansa is sorely tempted to say she has gotten her monthly and stay behind, but tells herself to be as brave as her brother Robb had been. The breakfast is luxurious, and Tyrion jokes that they all need the food before the 77 traditional courses they will be served after the wedding. Sansa notices that he's barely eating, but consumes several cups of wine. The girl has no appetite either, mostly because King Joffrey is in the room, occasionally looking at her. After breakfast, Queen Cersei presents Joffrey with an old cloak, saying it is the very same King Robert had draped over her shoulder during their wedding ceremony, and now the young king will do the same to Margaery Tyrell. This is followed by additional gifts from the members of the court, all of which Joffrey accepts graciously and in a good mood. This lasts until it's Tyrion's time to give him a gift. The dwarf's present is a book that someone calls an important read for every young king. Joffrey, however, has no interest in reading and even jokes that if Tyrion would do less of it, Sansa might be with child by now. He goes as far as telling Sansa that if Tyrion is not capable, he will fill in for his steed, making Sansa blush deeply with discomfort. She also sees that her husband is angry and holds his tongue with some difficulty. The last to gift the king is Lord Tywin Lannister, who gives him a magnificent longsword of Valyrian steel. Joffrey asks the court to name it, and after many suggestions, lands on Widow's Wail. He swears to use the blade to put a stop to his traitor uncle Stannis Baratheon's rebellion before he cuts Tyrion's book into pieces. The dwarf appears to be furious, and Sir Garland Tyrell informs Joffrey that there had only been 4 copies in existence of the book he had just destroyed. The king shows no regret over this, simply stating that there are 3 of them remaining. After the banquet, Sansa and Tyrion leave together. Soon, the Dornish prince Oberyn Martell joins them with her mistress, Ellaria. Sansa knows from Shae that the woman is not Oberyn's wife, even though she has birthed 4 bastard daughters to him, and though she had been just a prostitute when they met, Ellaria is now practically a princess of Dorne in anything but name. Sansa finds her not truly beautiful, but mysteriously captivating. Oberyn and Tyrion talk about the book. "I once had the great good fortune to see the Citadel's copy of Lives of Our Four Kings," Prince Oberyn was telling her lord husband. "The illuminations were wondrous to behold, but Caith was too kind by half to King Viserys." Tyrion gave him a sharp look. "Too kind? He scants Viserys shamefully in my view. It should have been Lives of 5 Kings." The prince laughed. "Viserys hardly reigned. He poisoned his own nephew to gain the throne and then did nothing once he had it. Baelor starved himself to death, fasting," said Tyrion. "His uncle served him loyally as hand, as he had served the young dragon before him. Viserys might have only reigned a year, but he ruled for 15, while Daeron wed and Baelor prayed. He made a sour face. And if he did remove his nephew, can you blame him? Someone had to save the realm from Baelor's follies." Sansa was shocked. But Baelor the Blessed was a great king. He walked the Boneway barefoot to make peace with Dawn and rescue the Dragon Knight from a snake pit. The Vipers refused to strike him because he was so pure and holy. Prince Oberyn smiled and proceeds to make a joke. "My prince is playing with you, Lady Sansa," said the woman Ellaria Sand. "The Septons and Singers like to say that the snakes did not bite Baelor, but the truth is very different. He was bitten 100 times and should have died from it." "If he had, Viserys would have reigned a dozen years," said Tyrion, "and the 7 kingdoms might have been better served. Some believe Baelor was deranged by all that venom." "Yes," said Prince Oberyn, "but I've seen no snakes in this red keep of yours, so how do you account for Joffrey?" "I prefer not to." Tyrion inclined his head stiffly. "If you will excuse us, our litter awaits." Once they are alone in their litter and on the way, Sansa tells Tyrion that she was saddened by the fate of the book and adds that the dagger Joffrey demanded instead might be a better present for him. Tyrion agrees that Joffrey does in fact deserve a dagger, then asks if he had any quarrel with Bran Stark, Sansa's younger brother, when they visited Winterfell a few years before. Sansa can't recall any fight the two might have had and finds the question odd. Out of nowhere, Tyrion declares that Sansa had clearly loved her brothers just as he loves his own, Jaime. Sansa, suspecting an elaborate trap, answers that her brothers had been traitors to the crown, not deserving any love. Tyrion corrects her, pointing out that while Robb Stark raised a sword against his lawful king, the others were innocent and died for no good reason, too young to be a danger to anyone. The dwarf then asks what exactly happened to Bran, and Sansa tells him that the boy fell while climbing a wall, as they all feared he eventually would. Then, to the best of her knowledge, he had been killed by Theon Greyjoy when he betrayed House Stark and seized Winterfell. Tyrion recalls that Sansa's mother, Lady Catelyn Stark, once accused him of wanting to hurt Bran, which was not true, just as he has no intention of hurting Sansa either. Sansa thinks Tyrion wants something from her, but cannot figure out what that might be. Her husband then says that Sansa has never asked how Robb and Lady Catelyn had died, and she replies she didn't want to know, as she has nightmares already. Tyrion promises not to tell her anything more, remarking that he too knows a thing or two about bad dreams. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 60. Tyrion VIII. Tyrion Lannister is looking at the new crown his father had given to the High Septon after the old one was smashed. This new piece is an impressive one, although it looks way too big and heavy for anyone to wear. In front of the High Septon stands King Joffrey and Margaery Tyrell, and Tyrion reluctantly admits to himself that they do look nice together. The girl decided to wear the colours of a maiden, despite being the widow of Renly Baratheon, and Tyrion now briefly wonders if she is, in fact, a maiden, before concluding that Joffrey won't know the difference either way. Dashing as though Joffrey looks, Tyrion wishes that the large statue of the father would topple over on him. He then thinks about what Joffrey had said when he had gotten his new sword this morning. Not unfamiliar with Valyrian steel, he boasted. This makes Tyrion think that it might have been his nephew who sent the Valyrian dagger and the man wielding it back in the day to kill Bran Stark. This makes a certain sense to Tyrion. He knows it wasn't himself, and that Jaime would not outsource killing. Cersei would be a better culprit, but she was too smart to use such an easily recognizable blade. But Joffrey is just stupid and arrogant enough to order some sellswords and give him the dagger. The dwarf now only has one question. Why? Plain cruelty, perhaps, he muses, something Joffrey has a lot of. The ceremony continues, vows are being exchanged and other traditions observed. Tyrion remembers his own wedding sourly. With the cape on Margaery's shoulders now, she is under Joffrey's protection, and Tyrion wonders who would protect her from Joffrey himself. Finally, the time of leaving comes, and Tyrion waits for his nephew, sister, and other important people to depart before he too can move. He and Sansa walk out of the sept together. Outside, the common folk celebrate the king. The new, beautiful queen is so popular that commoners are willing to forget how much they dislike Joffrey for her sake. Tyrion watches them in disgust. He then tells Sansa how much he envies Littlefinger, who had the sense to get a mission that took him away from King's Landing before the wedding. As everyone does, Tyrion and Sansa congratulate the newlyweds before moving on. After, as their litter crosses the town back to Red Keep, Tyrion looks at his wife and thinks that she's just as beautiful as the new queen, even in her coldness and grief. In a sudden, desperate attempt to finally get through her, Tyrion proposes a plan to leave King's Landing and visit Castle Rock to be far away from Joffrey and Cersei. Sansa's answer is polite, but without any real enthusiasm, and Tyrion bashes himself for being foolish enough to think he could eventually get Sansa to like him. He could only ever make women like him one way, he reflects, with his coin purse. The crowd cheers for the young king, while Tyrion thinks that now that he knows it was Joffrey who tried to have Bran Stark killed. Back in his chambers, Tyrion can finally relieve himself and get more wine, anticipating the rest of the day being just as tiresome as the first half had been. On Podrick's urging, Tyrion goes to get ready for the feast. He finds Shae and Sansa in the bedroom together, the former helping the latter dress. Tyrion finds his wife beautiful and tells her so, to which Sansa only has a lukewarm, polite answer. Meanwhile, Shae is begging for Sansa to let her wait tables at the feast, but Cersei has already picked all the housemaids and servants to be there. Wearing his new doublet that he thinks would deserve a more handsome man, Tyrion leads Sansa across Red Keep to join the festivities. Here, Sansa effortlessly mingles with the Highborn, having a good word for everyone, and Tyrion muses how good a queen she could have been if Joffrey had the sense to love her. Lady Olenna Tyrell, Queen Margaery's grandmother, joins them, complimenting Sansa's dress and telling her how sorry she was to hear about her brother. The old lady adds that Robb might have been a traitor, but killing someone at a wedding is tasteless. She then goes on inviting Sansa over to the Tyrell ancestral home, Highgarden, to which Sansa responds by saying that she cannot leave her husband behind. Lady Olenna apologizes to Tyrion, saying she just assumed he would be off to lead an army somewhere anyway, and Tyrion tells her that as the Master of Coin, his place is at King's Landing. The old lady responds with elaborate sarcasm, and Tyrion begins to wonder if her late husband truly died of an accident or rode off a cliff on purpose. Lady Olenna eventually leaves them be, complaining about the 77 courses of the feast, which she finds rather excessive. The newlyweds arrive in the throne room, riding beautiful white horses. They both have changed, Tyrion notices. Margaery left her modest wedding dress behind in favor of a much more revealing garment, which makes the dwarf think that she's too lovely for Joffrey. The new queen now has a thin tiara-like crown on her soft brown locks. Soon, the king and queen are seated in the shadow of the Iron Throne, having been welcomed to each other's family by kisses and hugs. Tyrion can't help but notice that, though he's the king's uncle, nobody tries to kiss and hug him. Soon the High Septon starts a prayer. Tyrion and Sansa have gotten seats a bit further from Joffrey, which Tyrion could have seen as an insult, but he's glad not to be too close to his nephew. After the prayer, Joffrey raises his cup and toasts his new wife. The crowd in the throne room chants Margaery's name. The first course of the promised 77 arrives, and Tyrion, who barely ate anything at breakfast, makes quick work of it, though thinking that serving 77 dishes while many starved at King's Landing could get the Tyrells disliked easily. He then wonders, looking at Sansa, whether she wishes to be where Queen Margaery is now, concluding that she must be smarter than that. Others are enjoying the festivities, and wherever Tyrion looks, he sees men with their happy wives kissing, laughing. He thinks about kissing Sansa, knowing the girl would suffer it politely, as is her duty, and even if he tried to take her to bed as a husband does tonight, she would let him do that too, only she'd cry after when she's alone. There is entertainment too, in the form of 7 singers, the first of which starts to perform a song about how Lord Renly, repenting after his betrayal of King Joffrey, had returned from the dead to fight his traitor brother Stannis. The song ends with Renly's ghost taking one last look at his true love, Margaery, which makes the queen tear up. Soon, both performances and dishes blur together for Tyrion. Another singer, named Galeon, comes announcing a ballad about the Battle of Blackwater. This ignores Tyrion's contribution altogether. Tyrion says, within earshot of Garland Tyrell and his wife, "If I am ever hand again, the first thing I'll do is hang all the singers," said Tyrion, too loudly. Lady Lynette laughed lightly beside him, and Sir Garland leaned over to say, "A valiant deed unsung is no less valiant." Gaelion sings, "The Dark Lord assembled his legions, they gathered around him like crows, and thirsty for blood they boarded their ships and cut off poor Tyrion's nose." Tyrion finished. Lady Lynette giggled. "Perhaps you should be a singer, my lord. You rhyme as well as this Gaelion." "No, my lady," Sir Garland said. "My Lord of Lannister was made to do great deeds, not to sing of them. But for his chain and his wildfire, the foe would have been across the river. And if Tyrion's wildlings had not slain most of Lord Stannis' scouts, we would never have been able to take him unawares." His words made Tyrion feel absurdly grateful, and helped to mollify him as Garleon sang endless verses about the valor of the boy king and his mother, the Golden Queen. "She never did that," Sansa blurted out suddenly. "Never believe anything you hear in a song, my lady," Tyrion told her. By the end, it's dark outside, and the first drunken fight is already over between two knights, both now removed from the throne room by the guards. Later, Joffrey calls for his jousters, which makes Tyrion think his nephew might be even more drunk than he is. Only these turn out to be dwarves with small lances, one riding a dog while another a pig. One of them is dressed as Baratheon and the other resembles a Stark. Everyone laughs as the tiny knights attack one another. Tyrion sees Joffrey red-faced, Tommen shouting in delight, Cersei chuckling, and even his Lord Father being amused by the sight. The only one in the room not laughing is Sansa, and realizes the girl is just staring blankly, likely not even noticing the parade on display. Tyrion decides he cannot blame the dwarfs and resorts to giving them each a fat money purse for their performance. He would find whoever is behind the spectacle though, and that person will get a different type of reward. The mock fight ends with the stag winning. King Joffrey calls for a champion to defend the realm from the winning dwarf, turning to Tyrion. Surrounded by laughter, Tyrion climbs up onto the table and tells the king that he would gladly ride the pig if Joffrey is on the dog. The king asks why he would, and Tyrion answers that he's the only man in the room even a dwarf can defeat. To his immense satisfaction, the boy turns instantly red with rage, while the room roars with laughter. After the pig and the dog leave with their riders, the music resumes. Soon, however, Tyrion is warned that Joffrey is approaching, and before he could even rise, the king empties his cup of wine on his head. Sir Garland voices his disapproval, but Tyrion, wiping at his face, tells him that he feels honored to be served by the king's own chalice. Joffrey, too stupid and drunk to take the opportunity to retreat gracefully, scowls at this. Margaery shows up trying to lead Joffrey away, but the king insists that for the rest of the evening, Tyrion would serve him at his table. The dwarf thanks him for the honor, to which Joffrey shouts it was to shame him. He orders Tyrion to pick up his cup and kicks it away as the dwarf tries to do so. The king makes him crawl under the table, then refill his cup while kneeling. The crowd now laughs at Tyrion again. At last, Lord Tywin steps in, telling Joffrey that it is time to cut the pie. The grand cake comes, wheeled in by 6 proud cooks. The crowd stands and cheers. Tyrion climbs back into his chair, his drenched clothes sticking to him wetly. In front of the Iron Throne, Joffrey draws his new sword to cut the cake, but Margaery says this blade deserves better than pie. Joffrey agrees and orders Sir Ilyn Payne to give up his weapon. Sansa believes she recognizes the sword and angrily questions what Sir Ilyn has done to the great ice of Ned Stark. Tyrion thinks he should have sent the Valyrian blade back to Robb Stark while he had the chance. Joffrey and Margaery use the mutilated sword to cut the pie, and followed by loud cheering, live doves burst out, whirling around. Tyrion, no longer finding his appetite, notes that Sansa looks very pale and proposes they should get some fresh air. But before they can leave the throne room, King Joffrey sees them and demands to know where they are going. The dwarf says he wishes to change his wine-soaked clothes, but the king orders him to stay in them, reminding Tyrion that he's supposed to be his cupbearer. The dwarf has no choice but to climb on the table again, where Joffrey had left his chalice, but the boy yanks it away before he can reach it and drinks a large sip of wine. He then plunges his hand to Tyrion's pie, which is where Littlefinger's agent placed the poison to kill Tyrion, and Joffrey begins eating Tyrion's poisoned pie with his hands, coughing. This he tries to cure with another swallow of wine, but eventually the coughing becomes so bad that Marjorie voices her concern. King Joffrey tries to assure her that it's just the pie he finds dry, but he's unable to finish his sentence. Realizing that he cannot breathe, Joffrey drops his cup just as his wife cries out. Olenna Tyrell is the first to react, commanding the people around to help Joffrey. Finally, Sir Garland starts to pound the king's back while Sir Osmond Kettleback opens his collar to free his throat. Chaos is setting in, with everyone yelling a different method they should try, and the High Septon starting a loud prayer. Joffrey's younger brother, Tommen, is crying, and Tyrion realizes that the king is going to die. And sure enough, even though Sir Meryn pries Joffrey's mouth open and jams a spoon in there to open up his windpipe, the young king is getting worse. Tyrion watches as Joffrey's eyes are bulging, thinking he has the same eyes as Jaime, only his brother had never looked this scared. Joffrey then reaches out towards Tyrion to point or to grab. It is unclear. Cersei begs her father to do something. Tyrion vaguely thinks about Robb Stark and the Red Wedding, and suddenly feels much better about his own half-botched ceremony. Then it is over. Cersei screams and Queen Marjorie sobs in her grandmother's arms. Tyrion, though his gut tells him to leave, walks towards his sister. He finds her on her knees, hugging her dead son. Lord Tywin stands over them, telling Cersei to let go, as Joffrey is gone already. In the end, 2 of the Kingsguard are needed to pull her off her dead son. The High Septon kneels beside the king and starts another prayer. Someone states that Joffrey has choked on the pie, but Cersei has a different opinion. She orders the Kingsguard to arrest Tyrion and his wife for poisoning the king. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 61. Sansa V. Sansa is listening to the bells across King's Landing, telling her that King Joffrey is dead. He had not been when Sansa left the throne room, but he was well on his way, and the girl fled, unable to watch his slow dying. And now she's crying, though the thought of Joffrey being dead fills her heart with joy. Sansa is now in the Godswood, where she hid her traveling clothes earlier, hastily changing out of her heavy gowns. It goes slower without her maids, but she manages, putting on simple dark clothes, as Sir Dontos had instructed her. After donning a brown dress and a dark green cloak, she lets her hair down, her hands numb. She examines the silvery hairnet she was wearing until now, realizing one of the black, a shy amethyst, is missing. It must have fallen off, she thinks, but it sends her spiraling. Sir Dontos made it clear that she was to wear it on the feast if she ever wanted to escape King's Landing. Soon, she suddenly wonders if Dontos will come for her, and if there was ever a ship waiting for her. But just then, Sir Dontos shows up. Sansa confronts him, thinking the missing amethyst was in fact the capsule of the poison that took Joffrey's life. Somebody must have slipped it to him after removing it from Sansa's hairnet. The knight denies this, swearing that the king choked on the pie. Sansa still accuses Dontos, saying he killed Joffrey, but he silences her, bringing news. Sansa's husband, Tyrion Lannister, is now under arrest, as Queen Cersei is convinced it was him who killed Joffrey. Dontos says they have to go, and Sansa follows, asking if it truly was Tyrion who killed Joffrey. She knows that the queen will think she had a hand in it. They leave the godswood behind, and Dantas is drunk, so much that while escaping he falls on his knees and vomits before continuing. They are hurrying along hidden corridors and forgotten courtyards until they arrive at an oaken door. Behind this is the top of a cliff just outside the castle's wall. Sir Dantas tells Sansa that they will have to climb down. This is actually the same route Littlefinger took Ned through in A Game of Thrones to see Catelyn. At first, Sansa objects, but Dantas assures her that there is a ladder carved into the rock face. Sansa follows and finds the steps of the ladder. Sure that she will fall at every step, she climbs until eventually her feet hit the ground. She does fall now out of surprise and feels fuzzy looking up at the cliff she just scaled. Sansa and Sir Dantas set out on the riverbank, and soon they come upon a small skiff. Dantas calls the oarsman Oswell, who is the father of the Kettleback brothers. Oswell scolds Dantas, saying they need to avoid using names. The two get on and row on the very waters Tyrion had triumphed over Lord Stannis' forces, silently sliding around sunken galleys with their masts protruding out of the water. The sky is getting lighter when Sansa spots the shape of a ship in the fog around them. The galley runs slowly and drops a rope for them to climb. Soon, Sansa and the oarsmen are on board, while Sir Dantas remains in the boat. Someone drapes a cloak over Sansa's shoulder, noticing she is trembling, and a familiar voice greets her. It is Peter Baelish, who's supposed to be at the Vale. From the boat, Sir Dantas calls up, saying he needs to go back before anyone realizes he is missing, asking for his payment. Littlefinger assures him he will get his due, and the next moment 3 crossbow bolts are fired upon the former knight, killing him instantly. "You killed him!" Clutching the rail, Sansa turned away and retched. Had she escaped the Lannisters to tumble into worse? "My lady," Littlefinger murmured, "your grief is wasted on such a man as that. He was a sot, and no man's friend." "But he saved me." "He sold you for a promise of 10,000 dragons. Your disappearance will make them suspect you in Joffrey's death. The gold cloaks will hunt, and the eunuch will jingle his purse. Dantas, well, you heard him. He sold you for gold, and when he drunk it up, he would have sold you again. A bag of dragon buys a man's silence for a while, but a well-placed quarrel buys it forever." He smiled sadly. "All he did at my behest. I dared not befriend you openly. When I heard how you saved his life at Joff's tourney, I knew he would be the perfect catspaw." Sansa felt sick. "He said he was my Florian. Do you perchance recall what I said to you the day your father sat the Iron Throne?" The moment came back to her vividly. "You told me that life was not a song, that I would learn that one day, to my sorrow." She felt tears in her eyes, but whether she wept for Sir Dantas Hollard, for Joff, for Tyrion, or for herself, Sansa could not say. "Is it all lies, forever and ever, everyone and everything?" "Almost everyone, save you and I, of course," he smiled. "Come to the Godswood tonight, if you want to go home." The note? It was you? It had to be the Godswood. No other place in the Red Keep is safe from the eunuch's little birds. Lord Peter took her arm. "Let me show you to your cabin. You have had a long and trying day, I know. You must be wary." As he led her below, he said, "Tell me of the feast. Did your little lord husband enjoy my jousting dwarfs?" "Yours? It is surprisingly difficult to hide a dwarf. And Joffrey, you can lead a king to water, but with Joff, one had to splash it about before he realized he could drink it. When I told him about my little surprise, his grace said, 'Why would I want some ugly dwarfs at my feast? I hate dwarfs.' I had to take him by the shoulder and whisper, 'Not as much as your uncle will.'" Sansa felt as if the world itself had grown unsteady. "They think Tyrion poisoned Joffrey. Sir Dantas said that they seized him." Littlefinger smiled. "Widowhood will become you, Sansa." The thought made her tummy flutter. She might never need to share a bed with Tyrion again. That was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? The feather bed had a sleeping shelf to make it more comfortable, and thick furs piled atop of it. Littlefinger pointed out a cedar chest. You'll find fresh garb within, dresses, small clothes, warm stockings, a cloak, wool and linen only, I fear. Unworthy of a maid so beautiful, but they'll serve to keep you dry and clean until we find you something finer. He had this all prepared for me. My lord, I do not understand. Joffrey gave you Harrenhal, made you Lord Paramount of the Trident. Why should I wish him dead? Littlefinger shrugged. I had no motive. Besides, I am 1,000 leagues away in the Vale. Always keep your foes confused. If they are never certain who you are or what you want, they cannot know what you are like to do next. Sometimes the best way to baffle them is to make moves that have no purpose or even seem to work against you. Remember that, Sansa, when you come to play the game. What game? The only game. The Game of Thrones. He brushed back a strand of her hair. You are old enough to know that your mother and I were more than friends. There was a time when Kat was all I wanted in this world. I dared to dream of the life we might make and the children she would give me. But she was a daughter of Riverrun and Hoster Tully. Family, duty, honor meant I could never have her hand. But she gave me something finer, a gift a woman can give but once. How could I turn my back upon her daughter? In a better world, you might have been mine, not Eddard Stark's, my loyal, loving daughter. Put Joffrey from your mind, sweetling. Dontos, Tyrion, all of them. They will never trouble you again. You are safe now. That's all that matters. You are safe with me and sailing home. A Storm of Swords, Jaime VII. Jaime VII. Jaime sits in an inn where he hears that his son, the king, is dead. Nobody recognizes the bearded, one-handed knight with the bat on his shield, so the people talk freely around him. One swears that it was Tyrion Lannister who opened King Joffrey's throat with a dagger, after which he drank the boy's blood from a chalice, but the innkeep says Joffrey was poisoned. Others pitch in, stating Tyrion's wife must have been on the murder as she fled King's Landing right after, accompanied by a ghostly direwolf. Jaime keeps thinking about Cersei, knowing she will cry in his arms. The company reaches King's Landing the next evening after a hard day of riding. Steelshanks Walton complains about the smell of the city. As they enter, Jaime thinks about his family, wondering if his brother truly killed his son. He finds the idea far-fetched. He was curiously calm. Men were supposed to go mad with grief when their children died, he knew. They were supposed to tear their hair out by the roots, to curse the gods and swear red vengeance. So why was it that he felt so little? The boy lived and died believing Robert Baratheon his sire. Jaime had seen him born, that was true, though more for Cersei than the child. But he had never held him. How would it look, his sister warned him when the woman finally left them. Bad enough Joff looks like you without you mooning over him. Jaime yielded with hardly a fight. The boy had been a squalling pink thing who demanded too much of Cersei's time, Cersei's love and Cersei's breasts. Robert was welcome to him, and now he's dead. He pictured Joff lying still and cold with a face black from poison, and still felt nothing. Perhaps he was the monster they claimed. If the Father above came down to offer him back his son or his hand, Jaime knew which he would choose. He had a second son after all, and seed enough for many more. If Cersei wants another child, I'll give her one, and this time I'll hold him. Robert was rotting in his grave, and Jaime was sick of lies. He turned abruptly and galloped back to find Brienne. Gods know why I bother. She is the least companionable creature I've ever had the misfortune to meet." The wench rode well behind and a few feet off to the side, as if to proclaim that she was no part of them. He tells her that they reached King's Landing, thus she fulfilled her oath of bringing Jaime home. But the woman reminds him that it was only half her promise, the other half being to reunite Catelyn Stark with her daughters. This she can never do now, with Arya being dead, Sansa missing, and Lady Stark murdered by the Freys. Jaime laments how Brienne looks more upset about Robb Stark's passing, whom she never met, than Jaime feels about his son's demise. She had been like this since the day they heard the news of the Red Wedding. All the fight went out of her. He now offers her safe return to her father, or, if it pleases her more, a place in the court. Or, he amends his words quickly, the city guard might benefit from her skills. Brienne refuses all this, saying she will not serve people like the Lannisters, who would break oaths so easily. Jaime refrains from pointing out there is no other kind of master to be served and leaves Brienne alone. The gates of the city are open, but there is still a long line of carts waiting, most with their own guards. Steelshanks asks the Goldcloak city guards what is happening and gets informed that merchants now have to pay for the right to sell their goods in King's Landing. Jaime finds it odd that the people are so willing to pay, but a miller from the line explains that with the war over and Lannisters holding the city, there is good money to be made. Jaime mentions Littlefinger and is told that the master of coin is now not him but Tyrion, or at least had been until his arrest. If King's Landing is mourning the dead king, it hides it well. Jaime thinks as they make their slow way on the crowded roads. Street performers are entertaining soldiers and children, and prostitutes are offering themselves from windows. Steelshanks points out to Jaime that there is now a new Kingslayer. So Meryn Trant of the Kingsguard is in charge at the gate leading to the Red Keep, and he, at least, recognizes Jaime right away. So Meryn obeys Jaime's command to be let through with haste, which reminds Jaime how much he likes to be listened to. In the courtyard, they see two more members of the Kingsguard, knights who have not been wearing the white cloak when Jaime was last here. He berates Sir Meryn now, saying it seems he forgot to teach the new members a crucial lesson: keeping the king alive. Just then, Sir Balon Swan spots his stump, but Jaime casually assures him that he's more than capable of fighting with his left. Jaime asks about his father and sister, just as Brienne finally catches up. Seeing her makes one of the new Kingsguard, Sir Loras Tyrell, furious. He accuses her of killing Renly Baratheon, stating there were witnesses. Brienne swears it wasn't her, and she would have died for Renly. She says it was a shadow of sorts that killed Renly, but Loras doesn't believe her and demands she draws her sword so they can fight. Jaime stands between them, warning Sir Loras that if Brienne were to engage, he would die, comparing the woman to Gregor Clegane. The boy dismisses him, so Jaime pulls rank, reminding him that he is the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and had just given a direct order. The young knight eventually obeys, and Jaime tells him that Brienne isn't smart enough to come up with a lie like that, which makes him believe that the woman is telling the truth. So Loras still insists on her being arrested. Jaime complies, but makes sure she's comfortable. In front of the sept, where Cersei is praying, stands another new hire in a white cloak, Sir Osmond Kettleblack. He mocks Jaime and denies his entrance until he realizes who he's talking to. At last, Jaime finds Cersei praying in front of Joffrey's body. The reunion is shocking as Cersei learns about Jaime's lost hand, assuming right away it was the Starks' doing. Jaime tells her who really did it, but she has never heard of the man Vargo Hoat. Cersei now tells Jaime how Tyrion had once promised to hurt her, stating this was it, killing her son. Jaime finds this hard to believe, as he suspects Tyrion knows Joffrey was his, and his brother would never do that to him. Not to mention how killing a relative is something he just cannot imagine Tyrion would do. He says as much, and Cersei recalls how Joffrey was pointing at Tyrion as he died, thinking it to be proof of the murder. She then asks Jaime to kill the imp for her. Jaime refuses this, saying Tyrion is still his brother, and besides, without his hand, he cannot kill anyone. Cersei dismisses this, saying he won't need his good hand to kill a defenseless dwarf, but Jaime still objects, telling her that he needs to know more details before he can make a decision. Cersei promises he will hear everything he needs, as there will be a trial. She then tells Jaime how much she missed him. They kiss, and it quickly turns into more, despite Cersei repeatedly warning Jaime of the risk of being found. Jaime doesn't care, and soon they are both on the altar, lying on each other. After, Cersei says doing it like that was a mistake and too dangerous, but Jaime retorts that he has had enough secrecy and asks for his sister's hand in marriage, stating the Targaryens had been doing it for centuries. Cersei says no, reminding him that their remaining son, Tommen, is a Baratheon on paper, which is the only reason he could inherit the throne. Jaime is beyond caring about that, proposing that Lord Tywin could take the Iron Throne by force, and Tommen could rule over Castle Rock for all he cares. Cersei recoils hearing this, saying Jaime has changed. She tells him to leave and see their father. Jaime does just that, finding Lord Tywin alone in his solar. Lord Tywin is not surprised to see his son, as Varys had informed him of Jaime's escape just days after it happened. The man shows him the stump, asking if he knew about that too. And Tywin is furious, thinking same as Cersei had, that it was the Starks' work. Jaime reveals that Vargo Hoat was to blame, Tywin's own man. He's now told that Hoat is no longer in control of Harrenhal, which was taken away from him by Gregor Clegane. He then asks Jaime if he can fight with his left, and Jaime lies, saying he will manage. He then asks how Joffrey died, and Tywin confirms he was poisoned. He adds that Tyrion served the poisoned wine to him with hundreds of witnesses around, and Jaime points out that Tyrion is much too smart to do something like that. Tywin insists on having a trial all the same. They talk about Brienne for a while, Jaime repeating that whatever Loras thinks, she did not kill Renly Baratheon. Lord Tywin then says Jaime cannot be on the Kingsguard without his good hand, but Jaime objects, stating that in the Book of the Order, it is said a knight is a member until death once ordained, regardless of his injuries or overall physical state. Tywin brushes this away, pointing out that Cersei already made the rule redundant when she kicked Sir Barristan Selmy out on the grounds of being too old. He tells Jaime that his duty isn't to the king, but his family, adding that he will be going back to Castle Rock with Tommen, who Lord Tywin wants to separate from Cersei. He goes on about his plan that includes marrying off Cersei to Oberyn Martell, as well as making Jaime marry Margaery Tyrell, Joffrey's widow. Jaime bursts out, angrily saying no to all of that, including being the Lord of Castle Rock. He yells at his father, who, in turn, says if Jaime wants to be the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and nothing else, then he's not a Lannister anymore. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 63. Davos VI. Davos watches from a window as Melisandre is praying to her god, R'hllor. A huge bonfire illuminates the courtyard, making shadows dance as the woman talks, echoed by the believers. Davos sees that though King Stannis stands with them next to his wife, he does not participate in the prayer. Between the two, the old smuggler can see their young child, her small face patched due to her grayscale. Davos thinks he can hear fewer voices in the prayer tonight and can see fewer people in the circle, but he isn't sure this will be the case tomorrow. He also spots Sir Axel Florent. Sir Andrew comes calling Davos Lord, which the former smuggler still finds odd. It is time to go. Stannis and the others will be praising their god for at least another hour. Davos joins other knights, knowing he will lead them into danger and possible death tonight. Davos knows that Melisandre could see the future in the flames. One of them, called Lewis, said they should kill the Red Priestess right away, but Davos reminded him that Maester Crescent tried just that, and Melisandre was ready for him. The only chance to succeed, Davos believes, is to ignore the woman altogether, hoping if she's not directly endangered, her flames won't warn her. And now they are ready. While the others are guarding the door, Davos and Sir Andrew enter young Edric Storm's room, who is with Maester Pylos practicing numbers. The bastard son of the late King Robert is surprised to see them tonight, but is excited to hear they are going on a trip. His only demand is that he doesn't want to pray for the fire god, and Davos assures him he will never have to. While the boy dresses, Davos asks the Maester if he will come too, but the man says his place is at Dragonstone. The smuggler, who disliked him at first, now thinks Pylos has some steel in him after all. When finally on the corridors, Edric asks where they are going, and Davos tells him the truth. He will leave Dragonstone by ship. The boy seems reluctant, so his cousin, Sir Andrew, tries to encourage him, but it turns out he is not worried about himself, but about Stannis' daughter, Shireen. Edric now insists that he has to say goodbye to her if he's not coming back. Davos, however, orders the boy as the hand of King Stannis to obey. This works, and they continue down the stairs. Soon, they are informed that the boat is ready and the galley awaits just outside of view. After a brief goodbye, Davos and Edric go their separate ways. The boy to escape with Sir Andrew and some of the others, while Davos turns back to face his king. As Davos approaches the chamber of the painted table, the guards uncross their spears for him. The former smuggler wonders if he will still be the hand when he leaves the place, or if he will leave at all. As he walks, he reflects that he reached too far. He should have been happy with the little land he got, the roof over his head, with his wife and sons, and the Sir in front of his name. But no, he wanted more. Davos waits for a long time before he hears steps and talking. Melisandre and the king are approaching. As they enter the room, Davos steps forward, confirming what the Red Priestess was just saying. King Joffrey is dead. Stannis asks about the details, and Davos tells him the widely accepted version is that Tyrion Lannister, the imp, poisoned Joffrey. Stannis reminisces about the boy, concluding that the kingdom is better without him, then adding how King's Landing must have already sent word for him, the now rightful king. Melisandre, however, points out they won't recognize him, instead crowning Tommen. Stannis admits this is likely. Melisandre begs Stannis to let her sacrifice Edric to the flames in order to wake the stone dragons of the castle. The king seems to agree this time, asking the priestess if she's sure there is no other option. Melisandre swears she will deliver the 7 kingdoms if Stannis gives her the boy, but Davos steps in, revealing it's too late, as the boy is gone. As he tells this to Stannis, Davos watches Melisandre's face and feels a spark of triumph, realizing she did not see it coming. Stannis naively thinks that pirates must have taken the boy for ransom, but the Red Witch tells him it was Davos's doing. The smuggler does not deny it, stating that Edric is now safe from the flames. Melisandre tells Davos he has no idea of what he has done, but Davos thinks it was simply his duty to do so. Stannis, however, points out that Davos's actions are treasonous. Davos swears he followed the oath he had given to Stannis to protect his people, which includes Edric. More tired than angry, Stannis explains that a king has to make sacrifices, and that the life of one child is not too high a price for the thousands and thousands they could have saved. Melisandre adds that when the long night comes, the boy will die all the same. Davos insists that a true king would not choose this path, finally angering Stannis. The smuggler goes down on his knees, reserved for his fate as Stannis draws his magic sword, the faintly glowing Lightbringer. Davos asks for a last word, and when Stannis permits it, the man pulls out a letter and, in the light of the sword, starts to read it. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 64. Jon VIII. Jon Snow dreams of being back in Winterfell, in the catacombs under the castle, walking amongst the granite statues of dead Starks. They still whisper to him, telling him he's not a Stark and that he has no place among them. As Jon calls out, looking for his father, brothers, Ghost, and even Ygritte, he wakes up in his old cell, just beneath Lord Mormont's chambers. Despite the furs, he is cold. When he first came to the wall, Ghost was keeping him warm. Then he shared his bed with Ygritte. Now, both are gone. A horn blows, waking him up fully. He sits, listening, and a second blow comes. Jon dresses quickly, finding his sword Longclaw and his crutch, and he limps out of his room. Outside, the night is swarming with the Black Brothers, all going towards the wall. Jon looks for his friends, but can't see them. He is sure it is Mance Rayder and his wildlings finally making their moves, and he's glad. Waiting is worse than fighting. With the stairs destroyed, the only way up to the top is the winch raising the cage, but it can only take 10 of them at a time, and Jon has to wait. As they are waiting, Saturn asks if it is Rhaegar attacking, and Jon says he hopes it's only him, as there are much worse things beyond the wall than the free folk. At last the cage is back, and they pile in. They ascend in silence and climb out of the cage the same way. From atop the wall, they see fires burn everywhere, dancing in the cold wind. Of weapons, they are well stocked. Scorpion bolts, barrels of lamp oil, hundreds of stones to throw, thousands of arrows. What they lack is men to use them. Donal Noy, the blacksmith of Castle Black, brings Jon's attention to the sound of mammoths. That and the torches in the darkness tell Jon that it is indeed Mance Rayder coming. The others would not bother with light, and they hate fire. Noy gives an order to hurl a barrel of burning pitch by trebuchet to light up the forest. In the fire, Jon sees that he was wrong before. Not a dozen mammoths, but hundreds. Jon sees the wildlings advancing, though it is impossible to see how many. Pip's voice comes, warning the Black Brothers that the wildlings are already at the gate. Noy gives a new order, saying he wants the wildlings to be nice and warm. Jars of loyal amp are lined up on the precipice, and after Pip lights them up, another brother pushes them off the ledge, onto the incoming warriors below. Gren sends a barrel of pitch after them. The screams from below come right away. In answer to the wildlings' songs, Septon Celador starts to sing as well, but chooses the wrong verse, containing lines about putting their weapons down. Donal Noy warns them that whoever decides to do that will be thrown off the wall. Then he calls for archers. Only a few step forward. One wonders how to hit anything in the darkness. Noy instructs them to fire blindly, saying they will hit something eventually. He then recruits a few men to go down and guard the tunnel in case the attackers break through, telling Jon he is in charge. There are many things Jon wants to say, like he is wounded, accused of treachery, and too young for such a responsibility, but all he does is accept the command. The next few hours are a blur. He oversees as hundreds of arrows are loose and orders the smaller catapults to be put to use. Mammoths and wildlings are dying down there, but the Watch has losses too. One of their 2 trebuchets break, and Jon is musing how they should have many of them, all mounted on sledges and turntables to fire in different directions at will. As things are, the wildlings soon learn to avoid the area where the last giant catapult can hit. Jon muses he might as well wish for dragons while he is at it. Donal Noy never returns, and Jon is in a bad shape, his leg wound torturing him, his fever spiking again. Despite all that, he grabs a longbow and looses quiver after quiver into the darkness, always promising himself a rest after the next one empties. Slowly, the morning comes. The half a mile wide no man's land between the wall and the forest is now spotted with the dead attackers, men, mammoth, and giant alike. But behind that, Jon and the others finally see the army. The Septon starts to pray. Mance herded everyone north of the wall under his banner. Saturn says in an awed voice that he did not think they had so many fighters. Jon, who spent time with them, was well aware, although this is still the first time he actually sees them all. The attacking force starts forward. Jon sees giants riding mammoths and with them a battering ram matching their size. If the gate below is still intact, Jon thinks, it won't last long against the ram. With the giants, normal warriors are surging forward too. Saturn despairs, saying there might be 100,000 of them, questioning how they could ever stop that many. Jon addresses not only him, but all the Black Brothers, saying they are standing on the wall, the one building that cannot fall, and it doesn't matter how many men Mance Rayder brought, they cannot possibly hope to win today. This motivates the brothers, and Jon gives orders to aim for the giants with the battering ram. Arrows, spiked caltrops, and stones are raining down on the advancing troops, killing giants, mammoths, and men. Jon shouts orders, and as his words become reality, the free folk break. The ram is down, its carriers dead. The charging battalion breaks, many dead, others retreating. Jon asks if there had been any casualties on their side, and a watchman called Spare Boot reports that he had gotten an arrow into his wooden leg, causing a burst of laughter. Jon is now too exhausted to even stand, his leg burning. He tells Gren to man the wall, surprising him as well as Pip. Gren asks what to do if the wildlings attack again, and Jon advises him to try to stop them. Jon and Pip ride the cage down. Jon, Pip, Maester Aemon, and Cletus enter the tunnel that connects the inner gate and the one on the outside. They find Donal Noye and his men dead near the end of the passage. A single giant, after breaking through the outer gate, crawled into the tunnel, and despite not being able to stand, went through the first iron grate and killed the defenders. He died in the process, but Jon shivers at the thought of what that army outside could do if just one giant could bring such destruction. Jon thinks to himself, one giant. All this was the work of one giant. Are they all dead? Maester Aemon asked softly. Yes, Donal was the last. Noye's sword was sunk deep into the giant's throat, halfway to the hilt. The armourer had always seemed such a big man to Jon, but locked in the giant's massive arms, he looked almost like a child. The giant crushed his spine. I don't know who died first. Outside, Jon sees the mammoth carcass and 3 more dead giants. Jon tells his comrades that they need to repair the gate and fill the last section of the tunnel with anything they can find to obstruct another invasion. He mentions Sir Winton Stout, thinking the last knight of the wall will assume command, but Maester Aemon tells him no. Jon wants Maester Aemon to give the orders. Aemon tells him that his order serves, not leads. Jon is getting impatient, saying someone must leave the Night's Watch, and Maester Aemon agrees, adding that this someone should be him. Jon declines, but the Maester insists, saying that the last commander chose him as a steward, Donal chose him to hold the top of the wall in his absence, and as a true son of the North, nobody is better to command the watch. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 65, Arya 12. Arya Stark wakes up, feeling as she had every day for a while, a hole in her chest where her parents and brothers had been. There are mornings when she finds it hard to even get up, and only does so because the hound won't let her sleep all day. Every night, Arya dreams of being a wolf, bigger and stronger than any of her pack, and every morning, without fail, Sandor Clegane wakes her from this beautiful dream with a helmet full of icy water if needed, and makes her tend to the horses. Sandor has his own stranger, and for a while now, Arya rides one they found after the battle. She named her Craven for being a coward and running away, and she does not love the horse because she could never love a coward. But she takes good care of her nevertheless. Arya hopes that when the time comes, Craven will prove to be faster than Stranger. Though Clegane used to watch her closely, lately he doesn't seem to care much about her comings and goings. The girl tells herself that one night she will kill the Hound in his sleep, but she never does, just as she never tries to escape on horseback either. The reason is simple. Arya Stark does not have anywhere to go. Her family is gone. The Stark ancestral home, Winterfell, is ruined, and she only has distant relatives left whom she has never met and cannot trust. Sometimes she is thinking about going back to Shanna's Inn to be with Hot Pie, Angai, and Gendry. She does not, for the same reason. She isn't sure she could trust them. So she stays with Sandor as they travel the land day after day. When Arya asks where they are going, the Hound just says, away, reminding her that he saved her life and she should be thankful. Arya sees it differently, and they don't talk a lot. Days pass without any of them uttering a word. Arya in her numbness and Sandor out of rage. The girl can see that he's furious all the time. One day, Arya and the Hound find an actual survivor of the Frey wedding massacre. He's dying from a mace-inflicted wound that messed up his shoulder badly. He tells them it was a Northman's doing, a man of the Boltons, with whom he drank and laughed until the bloodshed started. Arya knows right away that the wounded man is going to die. When he asks for a sip of wine, the Hound tells him they don't have any, but he can offer a bit of water and a quick painless death. Arya goes and uses Sandor's dog head helmet to bring water for the dead man. She tenderly helps him drink, and the Hound says he wishes he could have given him wine before he kills him quickly and painlessly as he promised. Arya then asks if they will bury the soldier, and Sandor replies that they won't, not without a spade, but they loot the body. The dead man's dagger Clegane gives to Arya, and he keeps his coin. Days pass, and eventually Arya asks where they are going, and this time Sandor answers her. He says Arya still has an aunt, Lysa Arryn, living up in the mountains in the castle of the Eyrie, and he hopes to get some reward from her in exchange for Arya. The girl thinks about this and decides that she doesn't want to be with her aunt. She needs her mother. Arya thinks important people like her mother don't just get killed. They are captured and held for ransom or leverage. Arya convinces herself that her mother must be alive and tells Sandor that they have to go back and free her. The Hound refuses and adds they are going to the Vale. That night, Arya dreams she's a wolf again. Not only that, but a wolf who can smell Lady Catelyn nearby. It follows the scent to the river where the corpses of the massacred are floating down and paddles in looking for that one smell. She finds the body, pale and dead, and drags it to the shore, where she has to snarl at one of her brothers to leave the dead woman alone. She commands the body to rise, to run with them, but nothing happens. And then riders come, and the wolves have to leave. This is where the Brotherhood Without Banners find Catelyn, and Beric gives her the kiss of life, bringing her back as Lady Stoneheart. The next morning, Sandor tries to talk to Arya about her mother, but she says it doesn't matter anymore, as she saw her dead body in her dream. The Hound just nods at that, and they ride towards the mountains. Soon, they come up on a small village, and Clegane says it's unlikely they would recognize either of them. He ends up taking up work as a wall builder, and they stay for a while. The villagers tell them that getting to the Vale is now impossible, not only with the incoming winter, but the beasts like Shadowcats and the newly well-armed Vale Mountain clans make it too dangerous. So they decide to stay, with the clansmen on the road and the Freys looking for any surviving Northmen from where they came. The place is as good as any to lay low, Sandor explains. He adds that they might find a way to send a letter to Lysa Arryn somehow. But once the wall around the village is done, the Elder tells Sandor he and Arya have no place there, and reveals that they knew who Sandor was all along. Clegane points out that when the mountain clans come calling, they might be glad to have him around. and the elder answers that this might have been true once, but everyone knows that the Hound lost the will to fight at the Battle of Blackwater. So the two leave, Sandor with a sword swapped for the axe he had been carrying. Arya can't understand what good a sword would do him if he doesn't want to fight anymore, but the Hound still sharpens the weapon every night. Their new destination is Riverrun, where Sandor hopes Arya's great uncle, the Blackfish, would buy her off his hands. Arya is not so sure and tells Clegane that they should go north instead, up to the wall where Jon Snow would be surely happy to see her. The Hound tells her it would be much too dangerous with the Freys at the neck, with beasts and Boltons along the way. Arya accuses him of being a coward, but Sandor tells her he couldn't care less about her opinion. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 66. Tyrion died. Tyrion is locked in a tower and listens to Kevan Lannister, who tells him that if he is indeed innocent, he has little to be afraid of. Tyrion asks who will judge him, and Kevan says since the king is dead, the decision will be made by his father, Lord Mace Tyrell and Prince Oberyn Martell. Tyrion is not reassured by that, seeing how Mace Tyrell had been Joffrey's father-in-law, however briefly, and Oberyn is famously untrustworthy. The imp asks if he could have a trial by battle, as this saved him once already back in the Vale. Lord Kevan advises against it, revealing that Cersei would have Gregor Clegane as her champion. Tyrion is annoyed by Cersei seeing through him so easily, and already dreads the price Bronn would ask for facing the mountain. Tyrion then asks if Cersei has any actual witnesses, and it turns out more and more people come forward by the day to testify against him. He says he needs his own witnesses then, wishing to look for them personally. But Sir Kevan points out that it is unlikely he would be let out of the tower. Kevan, however, promises to help find anyone Tyrion can think of. Tyrion asks for his squire, Podrick Payne. When Tyrion tells Kevan he did not kill Joffrey, his uncle just answers he wishes he could believe that. Once alone, Tyrion sits down to write a list of people who would speak for him. The parchment is still blank when Podrick arrives. Without possible witnesses to look for, Tyrion tells the boy to bring Bronn. He waits and waits, but Bronn does not show up that day or the next morning. In the meantime, Tyrion wonders who might have killed Joffrey, and he decides it was Sansa. Not only did she have a great opportunity with Joffrey leaving his cup in front of her, but she would have good reasons, many of them, to want to see King Joffrey dead. Only Tyrion can't imagine Sansa acting alone, and knows others would think she had partners too. The problem is, these others would assume it was her own husband who helped her. Podrick returns the next day with Bronn in tow. The sellsword tells Tyrion that he is in a hurry, as he is expected at Castle Stokeworth, where his future bride awaits. Tyrion has a bad feeling about this and quickly points out that not only is that girl dim-witted and pregnant with a bastard, but she isn't even the heir of the castle, having an older married sister. Bronn is well aware, but says the sister has been married for 10 years without an heir, so he likes his chances. Tyrion can tell this was all set up by Cersei. Tyrion asks why Bronn even came if he was already bought off, and Bronn reminds him that he promised to double the prize should anyone ever try to buy his loyalty. Tyrion asks if Bronn wants 2 castles or 2 wives, and Bronn says one would suffice, but the castle has to be huge in order for him to kill Gregor Clegane. Sadly, Tyrion cannot offer any high-born maiden or castle, but he does offer Bronn gold and his gratitude. The knight says he already has gold and cannot buy anything with gratitude. Tyrion tells him that, should he survive all this, being Sansa's husband would make him the ruler of the North one day, and then Bronn could have all the castles he wants. But Bronn replies that he prefers to sleep with the dim-witted girl and have a castle here near King's Landing, than facing the mountain and maybe having a bigger castle sometime in the future up in the cold north. Tyrion cannot argue with the logic. Bronn goes on, saying that though he likes Tyrion, he just cannot help. Should he somehow survive a duel with Clegane, he would still be out of a castle and a wife and Cersei's enemy. Tyrion, though sourly, wishes him well, and Bronn walks away for the last time, saying he still hopes the Imp will get out of this in some way. With Bronn gone, Tyrion cannot think of anyone else capable and willing to take on Sir Gregor, and he gives up on the idea of a trial by combat. Days go by without Sir Kevan finding Sansa, and the morning of the trial dawns. The trial is held in the throne room where Joffrey died. It is full of people, and Tyrion hopes that they are not all witnesses against him. The dwarf spots Margaery Tyrell between her mother and grandmother, only 16 and widowed twice. In front of the Iron Throne sits Oberyn, Mace Tyrell, and between them Tyrion's father, Lord Tywin. He wastes no time and asks his son if he is guilty. Tyrion pleads innocence, and Tywin goes on asking if it was Sansa then who killed Joffrey. Cold though his marriage is, Tyrion still remembers the vow he gave to Sansa and says he blames the pigeon pie. Tywin angrily asks if Tyrion is saying the bakers killed the king, and Tyrion answers that for all he cares, it could have been the pigeons, as long as it's not him getting killed for it. Some of the crowd laughs at this. Tywin calls for the witnesses, and the first is Sir Balon Swan of the Kingsguard, who states that he fought on Tyrion's side at Blackwater Bay, thinks he's a brave man, and believes him to be innocent. This is a surprise, and Tyrion wonders why Cersei would send a man who would testify for Tyrion. In a minute, he understands. When Sir Balon continues, recalling how Tyrion once hit Joffrey, Prince Oberyn says that the law is to cut off the hand that would strike royal blood, and asks if what Sir Balon says is true. How come Tyrion still has both of his? The knight says it was a special occasion, with the one dealing the strike being of royal blood himself, and also the king's hand. The next is Meryn Trant, who remembers Tyrion kicking the king, who was on the ground shouting how Joffrey shouldn't have escaped the mob. The imp now understands Cersei's plan. She sent in Sir Balon, who's known to be an honest man, and even if he states that Tyrion had hatred in him towards Joffrey, every following witness will dig his grave deeper. Sir Meryn also tells about the time Tyrion stood up to Joffrey when he was chastising Sansa, saying when Sir Boros stepped in, the imp threatened him too. The disgraced knight Sir Boros Blount is next, and he confirms the story. Tyrion now speaks, demanding Sir Boros tell the audience why he intervened, what Joffrey was doing exactly. But Tywin scolds him, saying the accused can only speak when spoken to. The dwarf is silent for a while, but when Sir Osmond Kettleback blatantly lies about how King Joffrey told him that Tyrion was planning on killing him, Tyrion cannot stay quiet. He shouts at the knight, calling him a liar, and Lord Tywin intervenes again. Cersei pleads with her father to put Tyrion in chains as a dangerous man, but Tywin instead says they have all had enough for the day, and the trial will continue the next morning. That evening, Tyrion asks Sir Kevan to send Varys to him. His uncle doubts the Master of Spies would side with Tyrion, but heals the request nevertheless. The next morning starts with two maesters, Balabar and Franken, telling the jury that they have opened up Joffrey's corpse and found no food obstructing his windpipe, and thus he must have been poisoned. This is followed by Grand Maester Pycelle, who names every poison in jars they put in front of him, telling how Tyrion had taken all of these from him after falsely imprisoning him. An endless procession follows this, people after people testifying about seeing Tyrion putting something in Joffrey's chalice, or hearing him threaten the king before. Tyrion is surprised to see how many enemies he has, with even strangers with whom he never had any dealings turning on him now. The second evening, Sir Kevan visits Tyrion again. The dwarf says Varys never showed up, and his uncle tells him that the eunuch won't, as he is to talk against him in the morning. Kevan then urges Tyrion to confess, adding that if he does, Lord Tywin will let him join the Night's Watch instead of having him executed. Tyrion laughs at this, recalling how Cersei once gave the same options to Lord Eddard Stark, whose head still ended up on a spike. Kevin points out that Tywin is not Joffrey. However, Tyrion cannot imagine his father permitting him to take the black if he'd admit to regicide. Kevin still urges him to trust Tywin, saying the man might have been hard on Tyrion, but he had to be hard in his whole life to protect his family. He adds that even if Tyrion were found innocent by some miracle, the people of King's Landing are all convinced he killed King Joffrey and would tear him apart on sight. The Wall is now the only place for Tyrion, even if he truly is innocent. The dwarf thinks about this all night, but cannot quite bring himself to trust his father. Varys' testimony the next day takes hours. He doesn't only have words, but documents too, a whole lot of them, one more damning than the other. Prince Oberyn even questions how he could know any of those, not being present at conversation he handles as facts. And the eunuch simply says knowing is his job. After Varys, Cersei pleads for the jury to listen to one last witness tomorrow, and Tyrion is almost looking forward to his execution, thinking it can't be worse than the trial. That evening, it's not Lord Kevin who visits him, but Prince Oberyn Martell. Tyrion asks him if he can even be there as a judge, and Oberyn says he's a Prince of Dawn and he goes where he pleases. Tyrion warns him that this will anger his father, and Oberyn replies saying he doesn't care much about Lord Tywin's displeasure. He then outright asks Tyrion if he poisoned Joffrey, and Tyrion honestly answers he did not. Tyrion then wants to know if Cersei had bought Oberyn already, and the prince says there is an offer of marriage on the table, which makes his paramour, Ellaria, especially excited as she would welcome the queen in their bed. All this would cost Oberyn nothing but Tyrion's head. Tyrion asks if this means Oberyn has made his decision already, and the prince tells him a story of Dawn's history, about a conquering Tyrell who thought the sash next to his bed would summon a Dornish woman for him to enjoy, when in fact it opened a latch to cover the man with deadly scorpions. Tyrion asks what Oberyn's point is, and he says if he were in the same situation, he would choose scorpions in his bed over Cersei. Tyrion agrees with him, and the prince goes on saying he should still be thankful to Cersei, as if she wouldn't have accused Tyrion. He, the Red Viper, known for poisoning his blade, and who has every reason to keep the Tyrells away from the crown, would be the prime suspect. He then mentions how under Dornish law, Myrcella would be queen, and when Tyrion points out that Lord Tywin would put a stop to them, Oberyn says even Tywin can't live forever. Tyrion warns him, saying Varys' little birds might be listening even now, but Oberyn doesn't care. At last, Prince Oberyn tells the imp that Lord Tyrell had made up his mind already, demanding the dwarf's death. Tyrion asks what he, Oberyn, thinks, and the prince says Tyrion appears so obviously guilty that he must be innocent. It matters not, he adds, as justice is in short supply at King's Landing. He brings up the time of Robert's rebellion and how his own sister, Elia, had been and killed by Lord Tywin's men. Tyrion tells him that his father had never given orders to do that, which is a lie, and adds it had been Gregor Clegane who did it, which is at least the truth. Oberyn, however, knows that Tywin was behind it all. He then adds that though he believes Tyrion is innocent not only in this, but in the sins of the Lannisters as well, innocence alone will not save him. But he, Oberyn, could. Though not as a judge, he volunteers to be Tyrion's champion. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 67. Jaime VIII. Jaime Lannister sits in a round white room covered with coloured tapestries. It is the first story of the White Sword Tower, home of the Kingsguard. On the next two are the little sleeping cells of the Chosen Knights, and above that, on the fourth floor of the tower, the apartments of the Lord Commander. For 18 years, Jaime has lived in this tower, and today he moved up to the fourth floor as the new commander. He's now waiting for the others of the Kingsguard while musing about how the sword on his right hip feels unnatural after always having carried it on his left, so he could draw it with his right hand. Jaime had been present at Tyrion's trial, but he kept to the back of the throne room. He thinks his brother might never have spotted him, and even if he did, chances are he wouldn't have recognized what he had become. Many people seem to have trouble seeing Jaime Lannister when they looked at the shriveled cripple he is now. However, he isn't even a Lannister anymore, as his Lord Father disowned him. Even Cersei avoids being alone with him. They have not spent any time together since that first day in the Sept. Before Jaime, on the shield-shaped white table, stands the immense white-bounded book, the Book of the Brothers, with its thousands and more pages. Every knight who ever served in the Kingsguard had a page in that book, the entire order recorded. It has traditionally been the Lord Commander's duty to keep the book updated. Jaime couldn't write in his left hand though, so he couldn't even do that. An update is long overdue. Several of the knights have died recently, and then there was Sandor Clegane's brief service, as well as the new members like Sir Balon and Sir Loras, still not in the book. Jaime sees with amusement that Sir Barristan, though pressed for time after his dismissal from the Kingsguard, still managed to edit his own page before leaving. The list of his deeds, first recorded by the hand of his own Lord Commander, then by himself, is long and impressive. In comparison, Jaime's own page pales, even though he had slain a king. He thinks that both of his predecessors, Sir Gerald and Sir Barristan, could have been a little more generous, as they left quite a lot of his accomplishments unwritten. He remembers battles he fought, legendary knights he fought with, foes he faced, realizing they are all gone now, all but himself. The other 5 brothers arrive, and as ritual dictates, Jaime asks them who guards the king, and they respond with Loras's brother, Garland and others. They sit, leaving a chair empty, which belongs to Sir Aerys Oakheart, currently in Dorne with Marcilla. Sir Boris and Sir Meryn sat to Jaime's right, leaving an empty chair between them for Sir Aerys Oakheart, off in Dorne. Sir Osmond, Sir Balon and Sir Loras took the seats to his left, the old and the new. Jaime wondered if that meant anything. There had been times during its history where the Kingsguard had been divided against itself, most notably during the Dance of the Dragons. Was that something he needed to fear as well? It seemed queer to him to sit in the Lord Commander's seat where Barristan the Bold had sat for so many years, and even queerer to sit it here crippled. Nonetheless, it was his seat, and this was his Kingsguard now. Tommen VII. Jaime had served with Meryn Trant and Boris Blount for years, adequate fighters, but Trant was sly and cruel, and Blount a bag of growly air. Sir Balon Swan was better suited to his cloak, and of course the Knight of Flower was supposedly all a knight should be. The 5th man was a stranger to him, this Osmond Kettleback. He wondered what Sir Arthur Dayne would have said of this lot. How is it that the Kingsguard has fallen so low? Most like. It was my doing, Jaime would have to answer. I opened the door and did nothing when the vermin began to crawl inside. The king is dead, Jaime began. My sister's son, a boy of 13, murdered at his own wedding feast in his own hall. All 5 of you were present. All 5 of you were protecting him. And yet, he's dead. He waited to see what they would say to that, but none of them so much as cleared a throat. The Tyrell boy is angry, and Balon Swan's ashamed, he judged. From the other 3, Jaime sensed only indifference. Did my brother do this thing? He asked them bluntly. Sir Balon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sir Boris made a fist. Sir Osmond gave a lazy shrug. It was Meryn Trant who finally answered. He filled Joffrey's cup with wine. That must have been when he slipped the poison in. You are certain it was the wine that was poisoned? What else? Said Sir Boris Blount. The imp emptied the dregs on the floor. Why but to spill the wine that might have proved him guilty? He knew the wine was poisoned, said Sir Meryn. Sir Balon Swan frowned. The imp was not alone on the dais, far from it. That late in the feast, we had people standing and moving about, changing places, slipping off to the privy. Servants were coming and going. The king and queen had just opened the wedding pie. Every eye was on them or those thrice-damned doves. No one was watching the wine cup. Who else was on the dais? Asked Jaime. Sir Meryn answered, the king's family, the bride's family, Grand Maester Pycelle, the High Septon. There's your poisoner, suggested Sir Oswald Kettleback with a sly grin. Too holy by half, that old man. Never liked the look of him myself. He laughed. No, the Knight of Flowers said, unamused. Sansa Stark was the poisoner. You all forget, my sister was drinking from that chalice as well. Sansa Stark was the only person in the hall who had reason to want Marjorie dead, as well as the king. By poisoning the wedding cup, she could hope to kill both of them. And why did she run afterward, unless she was guilty? The boy makes sense. Tyrion might yet be innocent. No one was any closer to finding the girl, however. These five were not the brothers he would have chosen, but they were the brothers he had. Joffrey is dead, and the Iron Throne belongs to Tommen now. I mean for him to sit on it until his hair turns white and his teeth fall out, and not from poison. Jaime turned to Sir Boros Blount. The man had grown stout in recent years. Sir Boros, you look like a man who enjoys his food. Henceforth, you'll taste everything Tommen eats or drinks. Sir Osmond Kettleback laughed aloud, and the Knight of Flowers smiled. But Sir Boros turned a deep beet red. I am no food taster. I am a Knight of the Kingsguard. Sad to say, you are. Cersei should have stripped the man of his white cloak. But their father had only compounded the shame by restoring it. My sister has told me how readily you yielded my nephew to Tyrion's sellswords. You will find carrots and peas less threatening, I hope. When your sworn brothers are training in the yard with sword and shield, you may train with spoon and trencher. Tommen loves apple cakes. Try not to let any sellswords make off with them. You speak to me thus? You should have died before you let Tommen be taken. As you died protecting Aerys, sir? Sir Boros lurched to his feet and clasped the hilt of his sword. I won't suffer this. You should be the food taster, it seems to me. What else is a cripple good for? Jaime smiled. I agree. I am unfit to guard the king as you are. So draw that sword you're fondling, and we shall see how your two hands fare against my one. At the end, one of us will be dead, and the Kingsguard will be improved. He rose. Or, if you prefer, you may return to your duties. Bah! Sir Boros hawked, spattered at Jaime's feet and walked out, his sword still in its sheath. The man is a craven, and a good thing. Though fat, aging, and never more than ordinary, Sir Boros could still have hacked him into bloody pieces. But Boros does not know that, and neither must the rest. They feared the man I was, the man I am, they'd pity. Sir Meryn, Jaime smiled at the sour knight with the rust-red hair. I have heard it said that Joffrey made you use to chastise Sansa Stark. He turned the white book around one-handed. Here, show me where it is in our vows that we swear to beat women and children. I did as his grace commanded me. We are sworn to obey. Henceforth you will temper that obedience. My sister is Queen Regent. My father is the King's Hand. I am Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Obey us, none other. Sir Meryn got a stubborn look on his face. Are you telling us not to obey the king? The king is 8. Our first duty is to protect him, which includes protecting him from himself. Use that ugly thing that you keep inside your helm. If Tommen wants you to saddle his horse, obey him. If he wants you to kill his horse, come to me. Aye, as you command, my lord. Dismissed. Sir Balon, I have watched you tilt many a time, and fought with and against you in Malees. I'm told you proved your valor 100 times over during the Battle of the Blackwater. The Kingsguard is honored by your presence. The honor's mine, my lord. Sir Balon sounded wary. There is only one question I would put to you. You served us loyally, it's true, But Varys tells me that your brother rode with Renly and then Stannis, whilst your lord father chose not to call his banners at all and remained behind the walls of Stonehelm all through the fighting. My father is an old man, my lord, well past 40. His fighting days are done. And your brother? Donal was wounded in the battle and yielded to Sir Elwood Hart. He was ransomed afterward and pledged his fealty to King Joffrey, as did many other captives. So he did, said Jaime. Even so, Renly, Stannis, Joffrey, Tommen, how did he come to omit Balon Greyjoy and Robb Stark? He might have been the first knight in the realm to swear fealty to all 6 kings. Sir Balon's unease was plain. Donal erred, but he is Tommen's man now. You have my word. It's not Sir Donal the Constant who concerns me. It's you. Jaime leaned forward. What will you do if brave Sir Donal gives his sword to yet another usurper and one day comes storming into the throne room? And there you stand all in white between your king and your blood. What will you do? My lord, that will never happen. It happened to me, Jaime said. Swan wiped his brow with the sleeve of his white tunic. You have no answer, my lord. So Balon drew himself up. On my sword, on my honor, on my father's name, I swear I shall not do as you did. Jaime laughed. Jaime says, 17 and a knight of the Kingsguard, you must be proud. Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight was 17 when he was named. Did you know that? Yes, my lord. And did you know that I was 15? That as well, my lord. He smiled. Jaime hated that smile. I was better than you, Sir Loras. I was bigger, I was stronger, and I was quicker. And now you're older, the boy said. My lord. Jaime had to laugh. This is too absurd. Tyrion would mock me unmercifully if he could hear me now, comparing with this green boy. Older and wiser, sir. You should learn from me. As you learned from Sir Boris and Sir Meryn, that arrow hit too close to the mark. I learned from the White Bull and Barristan the Bold, Jaime snapped. I learned from Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, who could have slain all 5 of you with his left hand while he was taking a piss with the right. I learned from Prince Lewin of Dorne, Oswyl Went and Jonathan Darry, good men, every one. Dead men, everyone. He's me, Jaime realized suddenly. I am speaking to myself as I was. All pure arrogance and empty chivalry. This is what it does to you. To be too good, too young. As in a sword fight, sometimes it is best to try a different stroke. It's said you fought magnificently in the battle, almost as well as Lord Renly's ghost beside you. A sworn brother has no secrets from his Lord Commander. Tell me, sir, who was wearing Renly's armor? For a moment, Loras Tyrell looked as though he might refuse, but in the end, he remembered his vows. My brother, he said sullenly. Renly was taller than me and broader in the chest. His armor was too loose on me, but it suited Garland well. Was the masquerade your notion or his? Lord Littlefinger suggested it. He said it would frighten Stannis' ignorant men-at-arms. And so it did. Jaime says, what did you do with Renly? I buried him with my own hands, in a place he showed me once when I was a squire at Storm's End. No one shall ever find him there to disturb his rest. He looked at Jaime defiantly. I will defend King Tommen with all my strength, I swear it. I will give my life for his if need be, but I will never betray Renly by word or deed. He was the king that should have been. He was the best of them. The best dressed, perhaps, Jaime thought, but for once he did not say it. The arrogance had gone out of Sir Loras the moment he began to speak of Renly. He answered truly, he is proud and reckless and full of piss, but he is not false. Not yet. Jaime tells him, I still have Brienne of Tarth in a tower cell. Loras's mouth hardened. A black cell would be better. You are certain that's what she deserves? She deserves death. His Grace put a rainbow cloak around her shoulders and she killed him or let him die. A large difference there. How could anyone have hurt him with her inside his tent and the others just outside unless they were part of it? There were 5 of you at the wedding feast, Jaime pointed out. How could Joffrey die unless you were part of it? So Loras drew himself up stiffly. There was nothing we could have done. The wench says the same. She grieves for Renly as you do. I never grieve for Aerys. She lacks the wit to be a liar, and she is loyal past the point of sense. She swore an oath to bring me to King's Landing, and here I sit. I have no doubt that she would have fought for Renly had there been a foe to fight, but a shadow. Jaime shook his head. Draw your sword, Sir Loras. Show me how you'd fight a shadow. I would like to see that. Sir Loras made no move to rise. She fled, he said. She and Catelyn Stark. They left him in his blood and ran. Why would they if it was not their work? Renly gave me the van, otherwise it would have been me helping him don his armor. He often entrusted that task to me. We had prayed together that night. I left him with her. Sir Aemon swore Brienne had, although... Yes? Jaime prompted, sensing a doubt. The gorget was cut through, one clean stroke, through a steel gorget. Renly's armor was the best, the finest steel. How could she do that? I tried myself, and it was not possible. She's freakish strong for a woman, but even the mountain would have needed a heavy axe. And why armor him and then cut his throat? He gave Jaime a confused look. If not her, though, how could it be a shadow? Ask her. Jaime came to a decision. Go to her cell, ask your questions and hear her answers. If you are still convinced that she murdered Lord Renly, I will see that she answers for it. The choice will be yours. Accuse her or release her. All I ask is that you judge her fairly on your honor as a knight. Sir Loras stood. I shall. On my honor. Jaime assures Loras that he would have done the same, though it's only a lies to ease the boy's guilt. Once alone, Jaime for the umpteenth time thinks about his own lack of grief. Joffrey was his son, yet he did not kill any of the Kingsguard the same way Sir Loras had killed his Rainbow brothers out of fury. He looks at his stump again and decides to get a golden replacement, something that Cersei might like, but not right away. He has more pressing matters to attend to. After this, Jaime turns to Sir Osmond Kettleback, stating that he knows every knight, squire, hedge knight, and sellsword of any renown or mentionable skill by name, and yet he has never heard of Sir Osmond before, asking how that could be. Sir Osmond says he does not have an answer ready, although the reason might be that he feels more at home in an army than competing in tourneys. Yet when Jaime asks in what armies he served, the man avoids giving a straight answer. When pressed further, Sir Osmond reveals that he had been a mercenary, knighted by a man named Sir Robert Stone. Jaime thinks this knight might be made up, but as Sir Osmond states he's dead now, it's near impossible to check. A common sellsword in other words, Jaime concludes to himself, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. At least he is sure to know how to fight, unlike Sir Boris. The Lord Commander dismisses Sir Osmond, who leaves in a good mood. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 68. Sansa VI. After a hard journey, the majority of which Sansa spends in her cabin being seasick, they arrive at the Fingers. As the freshly knighted Lathor brood helps her climb the slippery ladder into the forecastle of Lord Baelish's ancestral home, Sansa is musing on how no self-respecting knight would wear as run-down clothes as Sir Lothar does. She then remembers a conversation between herself and Littlefinger, in which she mentions that her husband, Tyrion, is innocent. Peter pointed out that the dwarf might not have had Joffrey killed, but that does not make him innocent. Littlefinger told her how Tyrion gifted his first wife, with whom he grew bored, to Lord Tywin's guardsman, adding that he had no doubt Sansa would have ended up the same eventually. Earlier, when she first saw where they were, Sansa reminded Littlefinger that he had promised to take her home, and he says he did just that. This was his home. The miserable little place had but a tower, and Lord Baelish tells Sansa that it didn't even have a name. He then tells her he couldn't take her to Winterfell as the castle is but a ruin, with the entire north, even the wall, fighting. He does assure her though that this is not their final destination, and they would only spend a few weeks at the tower. He then reveals that they will make for the Vale, as he and Lady Lysa, Sansa's aunt, are going to be married. Sansa's first thought was how Peter swore that he and Catelyn had loved each other, but she reminds herself that her mother is dead and it didn't matter what, if anything happened between her and Lord Baelish. As they arrive at the tower, the household comes to meet them. 2 women, 2 old men, and a child who Peter assumes must be yet another bastard of one of the serving women. Littlefinger greets his servants kindly and even asks the fat serving woman, Kella, about her boy. The oldest knight Sansa has ever seen, a man about 80 yet carrying a sword, asks Peter how long they would stay, and Littlefinger tells him it will be just a short while, asking if the tower is ready to have inhabitants. The old man, Byron, says it mostly is. Littlefinger then turns to Sansa to introduce his household. Grizzle, Umfred, his steward, and Byron is the captain of the guards, although the old man reveals there is no one else but him and his dogs guarding the place. Littlefinger replies that despite this difficulty, the old man is doing a good job as none of his rocks were stolen. He then turns to Kella and introduces her as the one responsible for his vast sheep herds, asking how many are there now. Kella says the herd counts 23 sheep. Littlefinger then invites Sansa in and the girl has to walk carefully lest she step into muck. It is a small tower with a single flight of stairs running up through every level. They settle and Sansa is given a cup of wine to calm her stomach. Peter orders some light food too and Sansa asks for a hot bath. Once they are alone, Littlefinger tells her that Lysa will not arrive alone, and they need to come up with a new identity for Sansa, as Varys, who has spies everywhere, would know within days if Sansa Stark showed up in the Vale. Peter thinks that they should tell everyone that Sansa is his bastard daughter. She's renamed Elaine after Peter's mother, but she's still not happy with being branded as a bastard. Sansa then asks who her mother should be, and Littlefinger jokes that it's Kella, mortifying the girl. He then amends this, saying Elaine Stone is the daughter of a gentlewoman from Braavos who died while giving birth. Elaine was then given to the faith, so Littlefinger urges Sansa to read up on the sacred books, as nothing discourages questions as well as religious talk. He then finishes by saying Elaine decided not to become a scepter after all and contacted Peter, who had no idea about her existence beforehand. While they eat, Peter talks about Sansa's late father, Lord Eddard. He says the man was brave and honest, but terrible at playing the Game of Thrones. He goes on saying that there are only 2 kinds of people at King's Landing, players and pieces. Sansa says she must have been a piece there, and Littlefinger agrees, but adds there is no shame in that, as she's still very young, almost a child. He adds that even some who think themselves a player are just pieces, like Cersei, who fancies herself smart but is utterly predictable. She has nothing but her beauty and her family's name, and one of those things will soon fade away. But what's worse, the Queen craves power but has no idea what to do with it. Sansa then says Sir Dontos must have been another piece, one that poisoned Joffrey. Lord Baelish laughs at this, saying Sir Dontos was barely good enough to lead Sansa out of the castle and would never have been trusted with a task as enormous as killing the king. Sansa learns that Oswell is actually the Kettleblack's father, and Littlefinger leads her to discern that it was the Queen of Thorns who poisoned Joffrey when she took one of the amethysts from Sansa's hairnet. All the plans were arranged by Littlefinger, who met Lady Olenna when he brokered the alliance that joined Highgarden and House Lannister. Soon after, Lysa Arryn arrived with a small retinue, and she insists that Peter wed her now at his tower instead of the Eyrie. Lysa wants to make another child with Peter, after her father aborted their first child years ago. A drunken Marillion tries to force himself on Sansa that night, but Lothar Brune forces him away. The next morning, Peter tells Elaine that Lysa now knows the girl's identity. Lysa does not like having Sansa around, although she does wish to marry her niece to her son, Robert.